Great. All right, it is 5:53 and calling to order the Manchester Essex Regional School District Essex Elementary School Building Committee, February 26, 2025. Okay, this says public comment. Anyone have public, there's nobody in the room. Anyone online wish to make public comment?
I just see Janet Carlson and Chris Dwyer. Thank you, Chris. The setup was great. Everything's working.
I'm going to go with, that's a no from Janet, so we will close public comment. Right, go ahead, Pam.
All right, green folders have your materials for tonight, and it's fairly straightforward. In the email, you had a link to the presentation documents that were submitted as in a response to the request for services. That's what your OPM subcommittee used for the initial shortlisting. So who you're seeing tonight are essentially the finalists in the competition for owner's project manager. So we will lead with Doran Whittier, followed by TTH, Turner, Townsend, Harry, and finally left field as our final candidate. We've scheduled about an hour for each. Take a quick stretch break in between, and that's where the green packet comes in. So if you open your packet, on one side, you have the finalist interview scoring rubric. So what does 1 to 5 mean? And on the other side, you have a scoring packet for each of the 3 firms that we're going to see, with a scale under each question that we'll ask them. So it will start with a presentation by each of the firms, followed by a Q&A from us. We can, if anyone would like to ask questions, we can just assign the questions now. It doesn't matter who asks them. What matters is that we ask the same exact questions to each firm. So what we'll need to do after the first interview is, if for some reason we don't get through our entire question set, we're going to have to set a last question and stick through it, stick to it. But I think if we, I think we can be okay and get it done within the hour if we stick to trying to be efficient and not doing follow-ups if there's something of interest to us. So that's the gist of what we'll do. We're going to see all 3 firms. At the end, you're going to give your score sheets to Michelle, who'll enter them into the master file and do a tabulation. And then based on the rankings, we'll see if we have evidence enough to move someone forward tonight. Did I miss anything?
We just need to figure out who's asking what questions.
Okay.
So we're not stumbling over ourselves.
So there are about 10 questions. And if somebody's interested, just yell out the question you like to ask. And if there's no objection from anyone else, you can put your name on it. Anyone? Anyone?
I'd love to have the group that did the winnowing down ask questions, unless people feel very strongly about asking.
I'm sorry.
I'll
The
do the
people
first
who
one.
work
General.
to narrow down the subgroup.
Great.
Oh,
You.
like Tyler and me
Yeah, you.
and Henry.
Here's guys.
So Henry said first 2, yeah?
First one.
First one, it's a big one.
Yeah.
Yes, I'll do the follow-on too.
You want to do the whole set, so you do everyone is signing up for the whole set.
All right, we do that.
Yes.
Sounds good. Yeah. There's 3 sets.
Okay, which one do you want, Gordon? Project management or technical expertise?
Let's see. I like the project management approach. That was the one thing that we spent so much time in evaluation. I like that.
Okay, that's yours, and Tyler, you fortunately said what you're really good at.
Love it.
That's
Technical.
It's like you had a vision.
I didn't, I just know that we have 2 minutes left.
So how much time do they get to present versus questions?
yeah.
Told them 15 to 20 minutes to present and then 30 minutes for 10 questions.
All right.
Do you-
So Pam, I'm literally gonna read that question verbatim right there, okay?
You can be you.
All
but
3 of those questions.
We can't,
It's gonna be hard.
we shouldn't,
Editorialize.
yeah, we can't editorialize. We can't add
I find that hard to
components to the question.
30 minutes.
I'm scared stuff.
30 minutes is the goal. And then we've got a 15-minute window of seepage.
Yeah, if we go too long or. And as we mentioned originally, we were going to collect the score sheets from you after every interview, but score them right after the interview, hold on to them. And if, you know, the following interview impacts your decision, adjust accordingly. And we'll collect them at the very end.
Sounds good.
If they're
Tally sheet ready to just plug numbers in.
Have they seen these, ma'am?
No, they have not.
So if they're presenting for 20 to 30 minutes after that point, do you want me to keep kind of a time of what's left for the three sections and move it?
That would be great. And if you enjoy being the timekeeper, we
Yeah.
can prompt them if they're starting to hit 15 minutes and it looks like they're still on their first
Yeah.
slide.
Yeah, I would say, you know, it's 15 minutes or something, tell them. And I think you have to tell these folks too, because the last thing you want to do is go long on these
Yeah.
things. It's not fair to the next group, and it's not fair to us.
Then let's tell them that we're going to do that. So they're not surprised.
Okay.
Use a little classroom.
I thought you were hooligans out there.
Who wants to review the directions for the folks who just joined us?
They're gonna do their presentations. There's three sets of questions. Henry, Gordon, Tyler are gonna take the questions. 15 minutes for presentation, wait, 20 minutes for presentation, 15 for questions.
15 to 20. So 15 is the ideal for the presentation.
Yeah.
20 is the max.
And then Michelle will coach you through the scoring.
Yes, so after each interview, fill out, or during it, fill out your evaluation form. The scores are on the left, the rubric. Each interview has its own separate packet. And then hold them to the very end, just in case the subsequent interview impacts your scoring on previous interview. So we want to make sure you have the opportunity.
So
to
Michelle, what I'm gonna do is I go through it, I will score them as they go.
Yes.
And then I'm gonna look at them relative to each other and then maybe adjust accordingly.
Correct,
All right.
exactly.
I guess the timekeeper, I'm going to go get the first firm.
Yep.
We'll be here for them and start their hour.
Yeah.
When we get,
And they come, yeah.
when they get settled.
All right.
Just look at
As a teacher in the group, I'm gonna say, make sure you write your name, stop the fee.
On all three packets.
Yes.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I will be bothering you and haunting everybody.
A little bit of a clunky setup. This is like a teacher roller, so we can put it wherever you want. Wires here. This is your display board. Take your time getting set up and then get you down. I don't click over this and take the whole thing out. It's gonna be weird.
Are you?
The brakes are on. That's the first pass, Jacob. Yeah, I mean, we're talking.
Is there anything you want us to back up and pull out of your way? Or you good?
Is that ready, set, go?
All right, Teresa, you wanna?
Yeah.
Get us going?
Welcome. Thank you for being here. Are you comfortable there? Because we can slide this over and have you in the center more if you like. That's not a problem at all.
I'm afraid to plug it in.
Or feel free to use both sides. There we go.
Problem solving already.
First test.
Can't wait for a new building with new tech setup. So it's seamless. This.
Well, thank you for joining us and congratulations on being one of our finalists. We're glad to have you here. We have an hour with you, and since we're starting a few minutes late, that'll add to your time, of course. So if you want to keep your presentation to 20 to 30 minutes, I will, as kind of a timekeeper, give you a gentle nod when 15 is up or so, just so you know. And then when the questions, when we start doing questions, they're in groups of three, or three different groups, excuse me. And so I'll give you kind of a rough time check on those.
Perfect.
All right? Go ahead.
All right, we'll kick it off.
Yeah.
Is it okay? I see some familiar faces, but can we do a quick around the room and do some introductions briefly? Would that be
Of course.
okay?
Please.
Mike Gerhardt on the school building committee.
Another mic. Without.
Andy Oldham.
Ruth Green. Teresa Whitman, School Committee.
Jen Hopperman. Kim Provo, principal here.
Tyler Burton, Essex resident. Gordon Brewster.
Annie Cameron.
Charlie Hay.
Henry Ottinger.
Tim McDonald.
Michelle Cresta.
Sam Bodum?
Perfect. All right. Well, first, I'm Mike Burton with Doran Whittier. I wanted to thank you guys for having us here tonight. This is a project that we've had on our radar for quite some time. In fact, it was 8 years ago this month that we were in front of the Manchester Memorial SBC. Time flies when you're having fun. And so, so we've known about this job for a long time. And, you know, for us, well, the one thing I remember was, you know, Manchester needed a two-town vote. And I remember being in this building and Pam actually making commitment, a pledge to the Essex voters and basically saying, we realize that we have two elementary schools. The MSBA will only let us do one. We are not going to forget about you, and you are next. And so, you know, making good on that promise, here we are tonight. And so kudos to everybody involved here. A little bit about Doran Whittier. So a couple things that we think differentiate us from some of the other folks that are in our business. We are locally owned and operated. We're a few towns over. We're out of Newburyport, Massachusetts. And the reason I say that as a differentiator is because I think about some of the other OPMs that I saw, you know, even 10 years ago, and they've all been gobbled up by national companies. So we're one of the last local firms around. Another thing that's unique about us is that we provide both owner's project management and design services under one roof. So that means we have a lot of in-house resources. You know, I think a lot of people, or I hope a lot of people here will attest that we look at ourselves as a collaborative team. And so, you know, we are not a slam your fist on the table and start pointing fingers when something goes wrong in construction, which is inevitable. It will happen. We're more get everybody at the table. We're going to hold all parties accountable and come up with a solution that works for the owner. That's just kind of how we operate. And because of that, you know, we've grown a reputation. You're only as good as your last job, and our reputation is firm but fair. And so we've gotten feedback from owners, architects, builders, subcontractors alike, and it's great to hear. So just here's how our org chart is broken down. I will be your project executive. I come with around 30 years of construction experience. The first OPM role that I had was in 2001. I've been working with the MSBA. I did a large high school project, their first CM at risk, Chapter 149A project in 2007. And altogether, I've done about 14 projects, 8 of them elementary schools, and 7 with the MSBA. And so ultimately, I'm here to be a resource for you. I'm here to help my team get all the resources that they need and help you guide you through the MSBA process. And so introduce you to your project director.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Christina Delangelo, project director with Doran Whittier. I've been with the firm for over 8 years. I've been in the industry for over 18 years. And in the time that I've worked with Doran Whittier, my first project was on the Memorial Project with you. I've done only MSBA core projects K through 12 in my time with Doran Whittier. And so based off of that experience, I understand the MSBA process. As your project director, my job is to work with our project team to ensure that we're following that process, that we're delivering a project to you that is on time, on budget, and that is the best for the actual educational aspect of the school as well.
My name is John Albright. As your project manager, I have one rule, and that's to deliver your building on time and on budget. So how do we do that? I think it's through team building. We have to generate trust with the designer and the construction manager and the OPM. For example, if you're like a 45,000 square foot building, and inevitably there will be problems, foreseen problems, known unknowns. It's my approach that we don't assess blame, but as a team, we find problems, we find a solution, and we move forward. Quick background, I am 5 years OPM services, 19 months with Doran Whittier. I was a building commissioner in Marblehead for 2 years, spent 20 years in design and architecture. Half of that was in the field as a construction administrator.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Rachel Rincon. I'm the Assistant Project Manager. I joined Doran Whittier 6 years ago, and Manchester Memorial was also my first project. So I'm really excited to be back here tonight. My role on this project will be assisting with communication and documentation and my project team. Some of you may have noticed I will be expecting a baby soon. But just to assure you that we have a seamless transition on this project, we're actually going to have 2 assistant project managers. So, Jacob.
Thank you. My name is Jacob Greco. I've been an assistant project manager in the construction industry for 3 years now, the last year with Doran Whittier. I'll be assisting all the team members here tonight and really be touching every aspect of the project, whether that's managing meetings, making sure agendas are posted, helping out with scheduling, and most importantly, daily coordination with all of you, the district, the designer, the CM or GC when they get on board. Really be trying to make sure that the wheels keep turning behind the scenes throughout the whole project, but especially while Rachel's at.
And then without us tonight, that's part of our project team. We have Dan Weidman. Dan Weidman is currently on another project in Tri-County, but he brings 40 years of construction industry experience. He is going to be our on-site rep. When that project finishes construction is when this project we estimate will start construction. So it's perfect timing to have Dan on our team. And then we also have Dave Menser. Dave Menser actually works on our architectural side of our firm. Dave is a code, design, and sustainability expert. We lean on him a lot throughout every project that we're working on, so he can provide us with updates as far as anything that's going on with building code and upgrades that we need to know about, so that we can inform our clients. And then we also have Peter Bradley and Victor Verma, cost estimating and structural steel peer review that we'll be doing along in the process. So some discussion topics that we wanted to talk with you about tonight include your site, your schedule, the local approval process, and community engagement. Your project itself. So forming the team, the right team, to us is the most important part that you can possibly do. And tonight you have 3 members here today from the Manchester Memorial Project, and we have 2 additional members. We think that makes an A team, A+ team. And so the reason why A+ team is so important is because we're going to be with you at every step of the way for your project. We know that you have 3 enrollment options that you have to study. For tonight's purposes in our presentation, we're going to focus on the K-5 Town of Essex 250 students option. And the most important is getting the vote. We were successful the first time for the Manchester Memorial Project. That was because we worked with both towns. We regularly communicated with them. We had many communications as far as community meetings and different forums. And we worked with hearing from everyone. So what's important about that is that we want to make sure that we get the vote the first time for the Essex project as well. Doran Whittier Management Partners has successfully gotten the vote the first time in every project that we've worked on. So your site itself, the Essex project, right here. We understand that there are constraints on site. It's a residential neighborhood. There are wetlands, there's a reservoir, and there's the existing school. It takes up the middle of the site, which comes with obviously constraints. And you're going to have to deal with Conservation Commission and other people in town in order to get through those different constraints. We've worked with conservation commissions in obviously many different towns, including Manchester, so we understand the different processes. We also understand that there is going to be parity between the Memorial School and the Essex School. Just for example, the Essex or the Memorial Project had 2 pre-K classrooms at 1,200 square feet and general classrooms at 950 square feet. And also a gymnasium that was larger than a typical gymnasium that you would see in an elementary school at 7,600 square feet. So again, for tonight's presentation, we're focusing on parity and the K-5 250 students scenario. We know that we're not the architect on this project. We know that we are the OPM, but we've been talking about this project for such a long time. we couldn't help ourselves and take a look at the project site and see whether or not we could come up with some options as far as how we could possibly build next to an existing building, along with all those constraints that we talked about, and whether it's doable with the amount of students at 250 enrollment, putting that into a space time where you know you're going to need over 45,000 square feet. Would it work? So we studied 4 new options and 2 ad rental options. Again, for tonight's purposes, we're going to just focus on one option, and that's building the new Essex Elementary School behind the existing building. You got a wetland area to the right, you got a reservoir area to the left, you have a brand new playground that you just built that costs, I know, a lot of money for the taxpayers, and you have your existing footprint. So we worked with our architectural side because we have those in-house resources that we can lean on, and took a space massing study of 45,000 square feet and just tried to figure out on the site where it could potentially work. And we thought that maybe this option would be viable. Obviously, again, we're not the architect, but we bring that knowledge because of our in-house resources that we can lean on. And that's what we're going to work with the architect on as soon as they come on board. Cost considerations. We know every single town, district, and community that we work in, budget and cost constraints are the #1 thing to consider. So how do we do that? We always think about the cost-effective design imperative for the project from day one. We want to make sure that we maximize MSBA reimbursement, the caps, as you know, the reimbursement system that you have to follow. For the memorial project, your school cap at construction was $325 for construction per square foot. Now, because of the different time and how things have changed in the construction industry, MSBA's cap is at $538 per square foot. So it's a significant raise from the $325 construction costs. So what we're going to do is make sure that we can maximize your reimbursement, that we can talk about effective reimbursement, because that's not always what the percentage is from the very beginning. And then we also want to talk with you about incentives and rebates. There are a lot of opportunities now within the industry as far as studying different mechanical systems, sustainability, envelope of the building, all to maximize your dollars, your budget for your project. And then also there's a new building code, the 10th edition, that's going to come out in, I think it's June 30th of this year. What that means is that there's going to be more energy efficient building systems, building envelope. And with that comes a premium. But again, as long as we're watching the project from every point of design, we're going to be thinking about how we can maximize the cost of the project for you as taxpayers and as the district. We took a case study from one of the projects that we're currently working on at the Fox Hill School in Burlington, Mass, just for cost comparative reasons. So that way we can understand if you took a building of your size with your enrollment, again, this scenario is K-5, we added in pre-K just for parity because of the memorial school having pre-K as well. What that would mean for total project and construction costs. So your project RFS, request for services, said your project was estimated at $66 to $74 million. If you take your 45,000 square feet, add in the pre-K and a couple other things like we talked about, you're looking around 47,000 or plus or minus square feet. Construction cost for the Fox Hill project is estimated at $882 per square foot. If you add in escalation and you add in other factors like soft costs to get to a total cost, you're looking around 62 plus or minus $1 million for your project costs. So from what you've projected at 66 to 74, we think you're on the lower end of what you projected, which is great news. And again, we understand the cost considerations and how we're going to be always evaluating that in every step of design of the project.
Good timing, that's about 15, just so you know.
Thank you very much. Took time to put together a project timeline. Again, this is based off of a K-5, 250 student scenario. After you hire us as your OPM, then you have to obviously, as you know, hire your designer, and we will help you with that process. And we're estimating that it would possibly be around a June timeframe. That's subject to change because of MSBA deal and all those things that we have to follow. The preliminary design phase, which is the first schematic report and schematic design, looking at 6 months, 4 months, and 6 months. And so you're going to take a bunch of options during the PDP phase, and then you're going to refine those to some smaller options, just take the number down to the PSR phase. And from there, you're going to pick your one project, which is then into schematic design. At the end of schematic design, it aligns perfectly with your town meeting schedule for November of 2026 that we're estimating. This is again, a scenario just based off of us being kind of in a vacuum at this point. But that would then align perfectly for schematic design to end and then go to the town for the towns for vote in November of 2026. From there, that would lead for a design development / construction document space for about a year and bidding for estimating 3 months. For a project of this scope and size, we're estimating around 2.5, 3 years and a move-in target date of summer, fall of 2030. Again, I can't say it enough. This is us being in a vacuum, not knowing exactly what your preferred option is going to be, what your enrollment option is going to be. There's so many different factors. We're just trying to show you that we've worked with you before, we understand the process, and we're happy to run scenarios for every single option out there. And Rachel.
So we know how essential community engagement is to Essex, but also to the success of all projects. The project does not move forward without the community's support, so it's a huge part of what we do. To achieve this, we need to make sure we're building trust, we're being transparent, we are sharing accurate information, but also that we're including the community from the very, very beginning. So how do we do all of that? We'll definitely send out flyers to make sure that residents are informed of upcoming meetings or project milestones. We'll also host community events where people can come, have their voices be heard. We also have a very customized website that residents can log in, they can write their questions, they can write their comments, and we can take that feedback and then respond as needed. So it's a great tool that we've used. Okay, so tonight I want to highlight the key goals that help guide a project. This example actually comes from the Manchester Memorial Elementary School project. So we basically gathered input from SBC members and what they felt was going to be important to their project. So just to highlight some things like educational program, we have sustainability, energy efficiency, cost efficiency, 21st century learning. And just those are just some of the examples that we got. So they may even be some of your ideas. But once these goals are established, they basically serve as a foundation for our work moving forward. And they also act as a valuable reference point for us, which also ensures that we stay aligned along the whole project process.
So the project website is going to be really a key tool to help this project succeed. And unfortunately, there's a lot of misinformation that comes with projects of these kind. So, sorry. So using this project website would be a great way to share facts directly with the community and try to combat that. We found that implementing FAQ tags has been vastly helpful, and these can be updated with hot topics depending on the phase that we're in. And not only that, is that the website can act as a digital library or database to help store information that anyone can access from the start of the project to the very end of it. So on the page, we have an example of a recent existing website that we took over for Lexington High School, and through a lot of hard work and community feedback, both pros and cons, we believe we created a really successful product that shares information with the community in a good way.
All right, so I see we're right at 20 right now, so I'm not going to go through the why Door and Whittier. If we have time, we'll come back to it. So why don't we just dive right into the Q&A portion?
All right, well, we have 3 categories of questions. And so with that, we'll start with I'll give you a time check at about 10 minutes in. So Henry, would you like to begin?
Great. Thank you for your presentation. Manchester Essex Regional School District has stakeholders in 2 communities, which sometimes presents unique challenges. Can you provide an example of how your firm has successfully navigated a project with multiple stakeholders, such as school committees, town officials, and MSBA?
Take a shot. Well, I mean, I think Manchester is the example, right? And we touched on it a little bit in the presentation. We've done 4 projects with regional districts, 2 vocational schools, and the vocational school had 15
and 12. Yeah.
15 sending members. And so while you have 2 towns to deal with, we had 15. And so what we learned on the vocational schools was all about this communication, which we're trying to really hammer home. And the website that Jacob just had up there, I don't know how many hours he spends on it, but it's like a real-time database And, like he said, just in a vacuum, misinformation prevails. And so we try and combat that with this as a tool. You can't have too many meetings, right, in person. So, there's just a lot of tools we have in the toolbox that have made us successful. And Christina said, we have not failed a vote today.
I think it's really important also to make sure that you're holding regular meetings where people feel like they can pluses or minuses back for a company. They want to be able to say what they want to say and have someone listen to them. As long as you take that feedback and you turn that into something, people feel like they
Setting up a communications working group. You guys have a big committee. That's okay. I've seen some good large committees and I've seen some not so good large committees. We had a blast on Manchester, and honestly, that's why we're here. So, we would implore a lot of the tactics that we just kind of went through.
No, I think that, there's different groups that you have to identify also, there's community-wide, there's abutters, there's people that, specifically care about finance, there's people that care about design. There's so many different working groups that you could possibly have, and we've done them all, and we're happy to have them all. We want people to be interested in certain aspects of that. And if that involves having community input, we've done design charrettes with, not just specifically about the project, but talking about just the design, laying out boards of, models and saying like, what do you think about putting, the gym facing this on the site? Or what do you think about having a cluster of grades in classrooms, general classrooms in this wing of the building? There's so many different ways to get people to feel like they're involved in the process.
Great. And please describe a project of similar scope and budget that your firm has managed, and what were the key successes and lessons learned?
I hate to, I'm not gonna go back to Manchester. I'm not gonna go back to Manchester because I think we've beaten that horse. I don't know. I think, Burlington, Fox Hill, they're a little bit ahead of you. We're going into construction in about a year's time. Not a regional school, but they had a lot of options that they needed to study, and that included combining multiple elementary schools. And what I've learned is that's kind of a lightning rod for parents, and it becomes very politically charged. So again, there was, a large faction that was just dead set against not even wanting to entertain that. But, MSBA is a partner. We have to play by their rules. But by having all these, community forums, the number of public meetings we had there, I probably can't count that high, but it's just constant dialogue. It's constant dialogue and getting people in the room.
Thank you.
Up next. Hi, folks.
Hi, Gordon.
So this is project management and approach. These subject matter. So Manchester Essex Regional School District believes transparent and effective communications between the project team, school district, and community stakeholders are critical for a successful project. Please discuss your firm's approach to these types of communications, citing several specific examples from past projects. And you can talk about Manchester.
Yeah, trying to think of a great example. Okay. You have anything, Mike?
Why don't you read that again?
Yeah.
I want to make sure I got it all.
You're gonna make me read it again.
Sorry about that.
Okay, so the Manchester Essex Regional School District believes transparent and effective communication between the project team, school district, and community stakeholders are critical for a successful project. Please discuss your firm's approach to these types of communications, citing several specific examples from past projects.
I'll take a stab at this one. So we worked on a Welch Elementary School project in Peabody, and we were hired 3 weeks before COVID happened. And so when we went to our interview, we were hired maybe a week later, and then 2 weeks later, the whole world shut down. So we didn't have one meeting with our school building committee, project team, stakeholders in person for about 2 years, which was insane to think about.
Wow.
But we had to completely learn something new, everyone did, how to communicate, how to work together on Zoom, on WebEx, on all those different platforms. And it was really interesting because we hadn't learned the client really yet. And then we had to hire on a designer during all of that. And then also pick multiple designs and get community feedback. So I think that that was a lot of challenges, a lot of transparency that needs to be happening because you don't have that one-on-one with people that way. It's just kind of like relearning your communication skills that you've never been through before. But we did a really great job as a project team. We were under budget. It was one of the most difficult projects I've ever worked on because it was a very small elementary school that was a fully occupied renovated project. We had to literally displace 2 grades out of the school within the district in order to hopscotch around the building and renovate it. And this was elementary school kids. So you can imagine how hard that was for everyone on that project. And I can't even tell you, the principal there, the superintendent, the mayor, everyone had such a great time on that project. And it wouldn't have happened if we weren't transparent and that we just learned how to work together through something crazy like that. You know, I mean, ultimately, probably one of my favorite projects I've ever worked on besides Manchester.
But, and there's kind of 2 phases, right? There's the communication phase during design, and then there's the communication phase in construction. Kind of hit sort of the design, and a big piece of what John is here to do is during construction, you know, we're going to have formerly called clerk, now project representative. We're going to have a full-time project representative out there, but having an on-site PM, which is what John just did recently. We were closing out the Peabody Welch Elementary School project. He's the eyes and ears, and you know, every day he takes copious notes. Maybe he could put notes moving forward, but he's the eyes and ears, and so you know, he's reporting back to me on a daily basis. I take the notes and boil that down and communicate with the owner directly. So what we're trying to do is keep you abreast of things that are happening, and you know, construction, right? Things come up. And so if we're there to help find a solution before it turns into an RFI, before it turns into a change order, like that's really the value that, you know, we think that we bring. And John, I don't know if you want to add anything.
No, I don't. I just, you know, it was a fast-paced project. I was on a little late. They were up and moving, but Mike's right. You know, we just communicate every day, one way or another, whether it's a series of photographs, whether it's 5 paragraphs of what's going on. But it keeps them in the loop. It keeps us all connected, and it allows us all to communicate with the owner and the construction team about where we are with the project.
Second question, how does your firm handle change orders and what strategies do you implement to minimize cost overruns and scope creep?
So I think cost overruns and scope creep, I think the most effective that we can be is during design reviews. It's very cheap to move a line on a piece of paper as it is to move a wall on a job site. So the most effective that we can be in cost control or change order management is during our design reviews. John also assists us with design reviews as well as several in-house architects. And so the most effective that we can be is during that design, right? Your cost influence curve. I'm sure you're very familiar with that one. But inevitably, we're going to get to construction. Something's going to come up. There could be an unforeseen in the ground. There could be, you know, whatever. And so I think our approach to change orders is, you know, we analyze every single one of them. And coming from a construction background, I've played the game not just as an OPM, I was also a construction manager. Right, so I worked for Turner Construction for a long time, and so I was the one getting the change orders first. I was the one scrubbing them before it went to the owner. So I've got years of change order review under my belt. Same thing with our approach and management style, firm but fair. right? You know, I think nobody wants, well, hopefully nobody wants a change order. They are inevitable. And, you know, I think as long as you're fair with people and, you know, if it's a gray area, you know, we're gonna get the foreman, we're gonna get the PM for the subcontractor in the room. We're gonna sit down and we're gonna go line by line. And I'm just not looking to be gouged. And as I said, you know, I think people, we have a reputation and people like working with us. Wayne Griffin calls me all the time. Okay, so like dealing with these subcontractors all the time, you get these relationships and, you know Wayne. He loves to beef up his change orders. I mean, that's why I got him on speed dial. I have no problem calling him up and saying, look, this is not 100,000, this is 5,000, right? And so we scrub them thoroughly. We don't let anything go before the owner until we're confident enough to say that we recommend approval for it.
Okay, may I ask a corollary to that question, Michelle? Or should I just stick to the script?
I'm going to ask that you stick to the script.
Okay. Sheesh.
I know, sorry. It was a gentle request. From a fair.
How does your firm incorporate life cycle cost analysis and value engineering, I need that word, into the project planning process to optimize long-term operational costs?
Well, the life cycle cost analysis, that's usually something that's spearheaded on the design side of the table. However, because we have a design side of our firm, we do learn a lot. And, you know, because we have the OPM and architectural side, you know, literally once a week, you know, we will get together, do lessons learned and, you know, talk about new things. And with life cycle cost analysis, HVAC systems, you know, Andy probably knows better than anybody in this room. They're constantly evolving, they're constantly changing, and we rely heavily on the design team to put these LCCAs together. But they don't always get them right. And so I think where we can be helpful with that is kind of, you know, take it back to the lab, take it to our in-house guys and say, do you agree with this? Do you think this is being replaced in 30 years or 50 years? And kind of scrubbing through them. And so I think that's what, you know, having both sides of the firm is really helpful with. And what was the other part of your question?
Value engineering.
Oh, value engineering. I also hate that term because there's no value in value engineering because you're taking something away that you wanted, right? Okay, so I also hate the term. It's an MSBA requirement, even if we're on budget. At SD submission, we have to put together. I don't even like saying it. I'll call it a value management list, right? And so our approach to value management is, and I'm going through this right now on another job. Our driving force is that you're going to create an educational program. That educational program is going to tell us how big this building is going to be, right? And then the MSBA is eventually going to say, yep, we agree, 47,600, whatever that number ends up being. What we do not want to do is impact the educational program, okay? So if there's a more cost-effective roof system that we can look at, that's an easy change. If there's, you know, with the 10th edition code, we're going to see how this pans out, but if there's a more cost-effective window system, everything's going to be triple pane. So it's looking at elements of the building without impacting program.
Yeah, but just to add to, I think it might be important, just from experience and working on projects during the design phase, as you're studying different mechanical systems, electrical systems, plumbing systems, looking at facade, materials, all those things. I think it's important to look at it from, you know, there's different options that the owner might prefer, or they have a preferred option, but there might be an option that they thought was good, or maybe it was just a little bit less than their preferred option. And you can start adding some of those things to the quote unquote value management, value engineering list. So when you do come to those important decisions, as far as whether you have a cost estimate done and you maybe are over budget and you have to exercise or look at some of those options. Again, you don't want to exercise anything having to do with program, but what are the other things that we can possibly exercise in order to maintain budget for the project?
You know, just one example is like, you know, we were doing a fairly large high school and, you know, we had selected brick for the facade, regular size brick. And we had to cut a couple million out of the job. And so we went to the roof, we got a more cost effective roof. We looked at the brick, we said, let's increase the size of the brick, the utility brick. And just that one little change, and I don't think anybody walking by that building would notice that difference. That one little change saved us hundreds of thousands of dollars just by changing the size of the brick. So there's low hanging fruit. And because we have to do this on every project, at every MSBA project, we have a database, a library, and it's not just the OPM side, the design side of the firm has the same database. So when it comes down to it, I go to the database, I start looking for the low hanging fruit and start from there. And the last thing I want to do is touch program.
All right, last but not least, technical expertise and innovation. Thanks for being here, by the way. So one unique aspect of this particular project is the age and conditioning of the school building and its existing infrastructure, aging infrastructure. What approach would your firm take when considering the feasibility analysis and evaluation of renovation versus new? Any specific examples that you've from past projects that demonstrate that approach?
Take it back.
Yeah.
So this building in particular, it's not that much different than almost every other elementary school we walk into. Same vintage, same problems. This building in particular, notwithstanding the asbestos issues, has a lot of ADA compliance problems. And ADA compliance problems are very expensive to fix. And I think very quickly, once we price out, I typically call the do nothing approach, which is basically a code repair, right? We do that, and the MSBA requires you have to do that as a baseline. So let's just say the do nothing approach or the code repair approach is, and I'm just going to make up numbers, $50 million. And then we start looking at ad renos or new, and they're comparable. MSBA, taxpayers, school building committee members understand the value of that very quickly. We have the exact same thing that we have right now. It's going to look like it has new paint and a couple of, doors are going to look different. And yeah, the heat's going to work, but it's the same thing as opposed to clean slate, new building, and dollar for dollar. They're right there.
As a follow-up, could you please describe a situation where your firm had to address unexpected structural or environmental specifically issues during a project and how it was resolved?
When you say environmental,
Like Conservation Commission?
I'd interpret it that way, yeah.
Soils.
The memorial project.
Keeps on giving.
We worked with Conservation Commission from very early on in the project, and they happened to have a third-party reviewer that came on close to construction, and he came in with a map that showed that the site was on a floodplain that no one at Conservation Commission knew about, which was quite alarming considering that we were supposed to put shovels in the ground a month and a half after that was found. So we had to come up with a way to work with Conservation Commission and figure out how we could split up the permitting process. So that way we could start doing demo, abatement, and start building foundations.
we needed to start.
Yeah, so we ended up splitting the permitting process in order to then finalize the order of conditions with the Conservation Commission. It was a lot of work, but we knew as a project team, that's the loops, or, that's the scenario, oops, thank you, that we had to go through in order to make sure that we didn't derail our schedule, which was really important. And, as we started construction, we also hit COVID with that project. And, there was a lot of skepticism as far as whether or not, because I know Boston shut down, whether anywhere else in the Commonwealth was going to shut down. And we were lucky enough to keep going. But that was probably the biggest environmental issue that I've had to deal with. Structural.
That's good. All right, last two here. Describe your firm's methodology for evaluating and selecting between construction delivery, SEMA risk versus design build for this particular project.
Sure.
Sure. I think it depends on the type of project that's selected. if you build on a brand new site where there's no constraints and there's not an existing building next to where you want to build a new project, I would do design bid build anytime. If you build on this site next to wetlands and a reservoir and a neighborhood and a pretty tight site itself, I would say that you would want to go with the CM at risk delivery method. There's pluses and minuses to both of those deliveries. With our firm, we've done a lot of CM at risk projects. We've done a couple of design bid build. You hire them on at the early phase with CM at risk. They're on during schematic design, so they lend to constructability review, bunch of reviews to help understand the design and to ensure that you're capturing all the costs and scope within your project budget, which, as you know, we have to set before we finalize the vote with MSBA. So I think there's a lot of advantages if you're building on your existing site next to existing school to do CM at risk. But if there was another site in town that had no problems or no issues and was easy to start just building on, I would say design to build. So there's pluses and minuses and very many scenarios to study.
It really depends on the project and the site. And so like Manchester could not have been designed and built.
No.
It could not have, but we're doing an elementary school in Newton right now, where the elementary school is going to be on the opposite end of the site. And so the way I think about it is, if you can put up a construction fence and do everything you need to do within that fence, go design bid build. Right? If you're commingling, if you're sharing truck routes with buses and parents and all these other safety concerns, there's that perceived premium. And I don't know if I agree with it. About CM at risk, the estimators will say that it comes with a 5% premium. I don't know that I necessarily agree with that, because at the end of the day, you get what you pay for, and it's what the price tag is at the end of the job.
Yeah.
Not a bid day.
Great. All right, last question. What experience does your firm have with sustainable design and construction, adherence to LEED for schools and that criteria?
Yeah, so I mean, the firm itself is one of the top 100 E&R firms, but that's on the design side. Our experience is more about, trying to stay up with all of these systems as they evolve. Christina touched on it a little bit, and we don't know what's going to happen with the current administration, but the Inflation Reduction Act seems promising up until recently. And so, I think the fact that that was there, if it wasn't in jeopardy, which I think it is, it would be something that we would absolutely be advocating for this project. Because, it's number one, it's being a good steward of the environment, right? If you were to go geothermal, solar, all of these things, it's the right thing to do for the, you got to justify the cost. The IRA was still, and it's not fully gone yet, but I'm not holding my breath. It was a no-brainer, and that would be something that we would be advocating for on this project. I think we're going to have to see what happens over the next couple of months and let some dust settle. But we're huge advocates for it. I think to walk away from, the project that we're going to do here is going to last 50 years. And, you don't want people saying, well, they had geothermal then. They had solar then. Why didn't we do any of these things that, so we got to think not just today, not just 25, we got to think 50 years out. This building is, unfortunately got to probably outlast all this.
And with doing those types of reviews with LEED and, looking at how you can maximize all of that, that also comes with incentives and reimbursements from MSBA. So we want to maximize that, and we want you to also maximize from that, right? It's a win-win for everyone. And the IRA might be going away, but there's also state incentives. That state is still in place, and we're hoping on that for all our other projects. So it's a real thing.
That's great.
Well, you have
Thank you.
worked on schedule with these questions. Thank you. So you do have some extra time if you'd like to finish with your.
Yeah, I mean, I'll make it very brief. For all the reasons listed here, I think we've hit them. I think the big thing is that, as we talked about, we were here 8 years ago. Whoever you are hiring tonight or whenever you make your decision, you're going to be with them for 8 years. And so we're here because we got to work with most of this group. And in the beginning, we were a little bit like, what did we get into? But it was a very high power, informed, like, good committee to work with. And yeah, we weren't always singing Kumbaya by the fire, but like, we like working with good committees. And I'm telling you, I've seen some not good ones. And so at the end of the day, we're here because, you know, I feel like I've made relationships with some people in this room. And we hope to continue that. So ultimately, that's why we're here. If I was you, I'd be looking for a firm that has a good track record with on time, on budget, good track record with votes, somebody you feel good about, somebody you can trust. And, you know, we hope that we check all those boxes, and we hope that our work in Manchester has, you know, earned our right to work with you again. So with that, I will leave it.
There is time for questions for us too.
Great. Thank you.
That's just a follow-up question on that, on the last question, because I think.
No, for us.
Oh,
If they
That's
have questions for us.
Yeah, we have to ask
send
the
to us.
exact same, yeah, we have to ask all the same questions. Sorry. Do you have questions for us?
When are you making a decision?
Tonight?
Okay.
Yeah,
No, like I said,
we're not leaving until.
yeah, no, I honestly don't think we do. You know, the RFS and everything was very clear. As I said, it's been on our radar for a little bit, so, I mean, my team's good.
Yeah.
We are too.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We're
Thank you.
very
Yeah,
grateful to have
thank you,
you.
everybody, for having us here.
Thank you.
Hope to see you.
It's been
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Take a little stretch break.
Fill out our numbers, take a stretch break, and we'll start.
Oh,
Okay, thanks, yeah. I know that.
Okay.
Joining us. Very excited to have you here. We're back on. They can hear us now. So, excellent. Congratulations on being one of the finalists. So thank you for being here and for all you've done to get to this point. How we'll do this is we'll do a brief introduction once around and then turn it over to you for 20 to 30 minutes of presentation. Then we have questions after that. And if there's still time after that, you can ask us questions. The presentation time at a natural break, if it's a slide or whatever, around the 15-minute mark, I'll give you a time check. All right?
We've tried to be expedient here, so we're timed for 15 minutes.
Great.
We don't want to waste your time.
All right, that's lovely.
We're better in Q&A.
Perfect.
I won't interrupt, but we are better now. We appreciate you stopping us and asking us questions.
Excellent.
We're not, we just
Well,
want you to be engaged with us and ask us all kinds of questions.
We appreciate that. For tonight, our questions are standardized for the three groups. And so we won't have a lot of the jumping in on questions, but at another time. So would you like to start down here, Mike?
Yeah, Mike Gerhart,
Ruth Green. Teresa Whitman, School Committee.
Jen Hopperman. Kim Provo, Principal.
Tyler Burton, Essex resident.
Gordon Brewster, Manchester.
Andy Cameron, Essex.
Charlie Hay.
Henry Hunter, Manchester.
McDonald, Manchester.
Michelle Crest, Director of Finance and Operations. And Pam Buckman, the Superintendent.
Well, thank you again for having us. We're honored to be here. We really do that. We don't say that as a lightly thing, which we're seriously honored. We know what it's like. I've chaired my own building committee in my own town for 10 years. Not too far from here in the town of Oxford. I know what you volunteered to do and you're brave, and I will give you that. Our proposal is geared on you getting to know us. More than anything, this process is, we're going to be together for 5 years. That's how we look at it. Could be more, could be less, but we're going to be together. So we want you to understand who we are and just meet us so you understand what we can do. We think our proposal demonstrates our experiences. We got this far based on that. So we're not going to spend a lot of time going, we're so great, we saw all this. We're going to talk about your project and introduce ourselves. So with that, I'll get started. This is all we're going to do. Introductions, how we approach your project. Why us? It's an obligatory thing. My marketing department puts in every proposal. I have to give the why us slide. I'm almost embarrassed when I do it.
but it's important, so again, so you understand who you are, and then including remarks and quick question answers, we want you to ask us questions. And this is us. I'm Chuck Adam, Project Executive, Project Director. That's a big name for the MSBA. They require a project director, somebody with the level of experience that unfortunately I have. I say unfortunately, it just means I'm the old guy in the room. But I've been working with the MSBA since 2004. I was the first consultant they ever hired. I was trying to be hired by the first executive director, but Governor Romney at that time had put a hiring freeze on, so I couldn't get hired as a state employee. It actually worked out better for me in the long run, so I'm not complaining. So with that, we've got.
I'm Brian Ramatka. I'll be your main point of contact throughout the entire project. Architect, actually, I started my design career working on school projects. I've also had my own practice. I've done capital facilities planning, construction claims work, really a variety of design projects. And I'm also local. I live up in Newburyport. I've been kind of keeping an eye on this project for the past year, so I'm excited to be here and hope that we can work together.
Good evening, all. My name is Mark Stafford. I'm Senior Project Manager. I'll be assisting Brian on the day-to-day operations. I'm going to be covering the design and document review. I'm also an architect by trade. I started out my career with schoolwork, but I've also moved on to energy work and project management work. And I took a boat up here from Marshfield.
And I'd like to introduce Chris Friendly, but he's not here because unfortunately those you with young kids know that if you have a child at daycare, you come home with everything. Chris has the flu. He tried to get out of bed, come here today, and I told him no, we couldn't do it. Because one, I didn't want to contaminate the whole room. So he's home. He apologizes for not being here, but we can cover it. Yes, we've all done his assignments on the job. With that, I'm going to start with Brian to talk about our PM process. And there may be some interaction between us, but we want to go through the process and how we're approaching it.
Yeah, we see our role as really being your advocate throughout the entire process. We understand the significance of the project for the community. And most importantly, we understand the significance of costs for these types of projects. So we're going to work with you to manage those. We're managing the project schedules, the project budgets, helping you guide you through design decisions, providing feedback on different avenues that we can take. Making sure that the communication is effective on the entire project team, on the school building committee, the design team, and eventually also with the contractor as well. So we want to make sure that this project is successful. We want to make sure that you guys have fun on this project, right? It's going to be a long haul for the next 5 years, perhaps. And we also feel that building a quality team, so with the committee, with the towns, but also with the designer and the contractor is really necessary to have a successful project. You have to have all parties pulling in the same direction, especially nowadays when projects are very challenging, related to cost, both getting them passed and also managing this cost. We have to have all the players on the same team. One other thing I think that's unique about our project management process is that we have an extensive array of resources within our organization that we can turn to for support when that's needed. Maybe we have specific questions about commissioning or building controls. We can pick up the phone, call one of our commissioning agents and get some input on that. And one of the things I think that is most relevant right now is, we're going through a lot of changes politically that seem to have an impact on the upcoming construction market. So we keep our tabs on that as well. We have economists within our organization that can give us guidance on what to expect, and we can feed that information to you to help you make good decisions for your project.
We're going to start and talk a little bit about what we see as your challenges. Brian, I'll go through this real quick, but your grade configurations, we understand, we've read it, we've read the letters from the MSBA, we've seen the information statement of interest. This is what they told you this study can do. Sometimes, as we're going through those processes, there are other things that need to be looked at. They can be pretty rigid and say, no, don't go off this script. I've had experience and we've gone to them and said, hey, listen, just listen to us for a minute. And there could be an opportunity to look at something to solve a bigger problem within the district. They have their ears open. They will listen to us. In the town of Georgetown, I did a project for them. They wanted to see why did we have to do the elementary school and what was wrong with the high school? We walked them through the high school and they said, put an emergency SOI, I want you to do both projects at the same time. The reason was, it took them off the list. Then they weren't ever going to be bothering the MSBA again. It also fixed some serious overcrowding issues. That's only happened one other time in the history of the MSBA. But we're just giving you that story to say, while they want you to look at this, we will never promise that we'll go past this, but there are opportunities. They will engage with you and engage with us. We work with them long enough that we understand what they're facing. We won't go through this whole list, but there are a number of things facing your project. Brian mentioned the community outreach. We have a whole slide on that. We're going to get to it in a few minutes. Big piece. Big piece. You know it better than anybody. Just to get the funding passed for this, we know what you went through. We watched it. I'm one of those people that sits home at night when there's not a hockey game on, and I watch other people's town meetings. I can't help it. I've been building school for 35 years. I don't know anything else to do. And my wife, she just sort of laughs and goes around and goes, well, there's something wrong with you, but that's just life. So we've seen what you put through. There's a lot of other things on here on MERSD and design, bid, build, way down the road. Something to talk about in the future when we find out what your project is. That's the key.
Yeah, I was just going to say that, we want to arrive at a holistic solution that works for your community. So, we're willing to walk that path with you and explore whatever outcome that is. Is it a renovation project? Does a new construction make sense? Are we doing something here? Are we also considering something in Manchester? And I think, when we go through the next stage, which would be to bring the designer on board, we want to really be able to communicate what all those variables are so that we can have a designer that's creative and understanding, good design solutions for a variety of solutions, because we don't know what the right one is for your project.
And the last bullet on the sustainability and the utility rebates programs, I was part of the creation of the utility rebate programs back a while ago when I was working with National Grid and Mass Save. So quite versed in taking advantage of those programs and getting the best you can for projects. So.
It should also be mentioned that a friend of Mark's and I, who runs the school's rebate program, she's a neighbor of mine in Oxford, and we talk to her every day. They work pretty. We have a good relationship with those people. We wanted to briefly touch your schedule that Brian's going to get into. This is part of a very long schedule. I know it's small, it's hard to read. We can get into it later if there's time and question and answer. I can show you the whole schedule with all the bullets in it. It's a lot. It's not here to scare you, but it's here to show you this is your schedule.
Yeah, I think we won't spend too much time on it. I have a feeling that many of you probably are familiar with the MSBA process. You recently completed the elementary school in Manchester. But basically, once we start up, the first thing that we're going to want to do is bring an architect on board so that we can get started with the design process. So we'll help you put together your request for qualifications. We'll also work within our network to encourage qualified design firms that have been successful for other communities to be aware that this project's happening. We want to open up a pool of candidates so that you have excellent design firms to choose from. You want to have one that is a good fit for you, because as we mentioned, it's going to be a long process. After that, we'll jump into the feasibility stage. We'll need to look at the design program, your spaces, existing facilities, and come up with a variety of solutions that will meet your needs. Those will be evaluated. We will put together a report that goes to the MSBA for their feedback. That's the preliminary design program report. You'll get feedback. It's this constant exchange really throughout all design stages of the project. After that, we'll be looking to figure out, what the preferred solution is, understanding what the costs are, and again, go through the back and forth process, putting together the report, which we will do for you, sending it to the MSBA, getting their feedback, and then ultimately getting to the schematic design level, where we can put together a very solid, robust, I think is what the term that the MSBA uses, which is helpful, right? Because we want to eliminate as many unknowns as we can during that stage so that we can put together a good project budget so that there's sufficient money to execute the project without delay.
And knowing the process with the MSBA, they're very rigid in their process, as you probably know. There's certain dates that you have to meet. There's board of directors meetings that you have to meet. You have to get the reviews in and get your responses back within 14 days. Like we've been through the process a lot of times. So that schedule is going to bear out right away how everything is going to work and what the timing of everything is going to be because of their process.
And one thing I wanted to point out right related to this slide is that during that first stage, what's really critical is the communications with the community. People need to understand that this project is happening. What is it about? Why do we need to do something? What are the variables? How is it going to affect me? And I'm happy that you guys are on a great start with that. You have a nice project website, a lot of good information. We want to help you to take that kind of to the next level as we go through the upcoming stage. And Mark can talk about.
So as vital as your cost and your schedule is community outreach. You've got to make sure that there's engagement and there's transparency. The one thing we want to avoid is somebody coming up at some point and saying, I never heard about that. Why didn't you tell me about this? And they put together like no votes for whatever you need because they weren't in the loop or whatever. So we've implemented, very successful community outreach programs. We are currently in Cape Elizabeth, Gloucester, and there's a project I'm working on right now in Littleton, making sure, the website has the proper information and is updated. Found schedules that get all the information on it, social media, mailings, websites, like everything that you possibly can to get out there. We would recommend it's such a group that you probably have a subcommittee that handles communications and community outreach that will make recommendations to the full committee. But we've worked with many of them just to get the word out. That's one of the biggest parts.
Yeah, so cost is an issue, right? That's probably not a surprise to anybody here, especially nowadays. Buildings are expensive and school projects are expensive. And even with the assistance from the MSBA, there's still going to be an impact to the taxpayer. So we want to manage those costs for you and with you throughout the entire project. What we found is that the biggest impact on costs happens during the early stages. When you're making those big decisions about what's the scope of the project, how large is the school, what are the complexities involved with the site or with the building program? Do we have swing space costs that need to be considered? All of those larger decisions are made early on. So we'll be with you during those phases, giving you consultation on cost options. But also, our philosophy really is to manage the costs all the way through the project. So even when the project goes out to bid, it doesn't stop there. We can still find cost savings for clients. So just recently, I completed an MSBA elementary school project up in Gloucester. So that project went out to bid right at the height of COVID inflation. And we had tremendous challenge to keep it going forward. But we managed the cost all the way through. So design phase, we had to go through, I believe it was 3 or 4 different rounds of value engineering, each time finding ways that we can cut the costs without affecting the program or the quality of the project. Because we were able to do that, we kept close tabs on the cost, we were able to move forward with the construction project immediately and award the contract. So that also saves time and money. But it didn't stop there. We built a very strong team effort to manage costs because everyone was aware of, the delays and getting shipments and the costs going up. So we said, in order for us to be successful, we all need to work on this together. So we created that atmosphere working with the contractor, with the subcontractors, and we were able to come up with creative ways to save money even after the project started. So we had deduct change orders. Sometimes shifting to different materials, sometimes because a certain material wasn't readily available, but we could use something else that we could get on time that prevented delays. So we finished that project on time and on budget, and even gave back a significant amount of money to the city afterwards, even after they added things to the end. So it was really a great success.
Just so you know, you're at about 15 minutes.
Yeah, I think we have 3 left. We're gonna, Mark and I are gonna handle this one because we both come from it. This is where Chris would have jumped in. Just imagine a younger guy than us, but who is equally as talented. He is remarkable for a young guy. I say young guy, everybody younger than me is a young guy, so that's fine. But Chris has been with us since the moment he got out of college. He did co-ops with us. He has never left our firm. He is an exceptional, dedicated, really field construction guy. But Mark will respond to this slide for us.
So during construction, our approach is full-time representation. There's going to be a full-time person on site all the time that handles the interaction between the contract and or construction manager, the designer, does daily reports, does daily photographs. Those daily reports go into weekly reports that end up being the monthly reports that we end up giving you. They oversee the cost, the invoicing, anything that has to do with payments with the contractor. Any issues that come up at all with the project will be informing you right away about any changes and things. Overseeing the documents, overseeing the construction. So he's there full-time, he's very knowledgeable, and any of the bullets there that I haven't touched upon are things that we will do full-time. Brian and I will be there probably mostly weekly at the project meetings, and we'll probably be there along with Chris for the school building committee meetings when you all get together and review everything. So the presence on site is full-time, and it's very interactive and very collaborative.
We should also say that he is sort of North Shore as well. He lives in Chelmsford. He is not a stranger to traveling to do projects. He likes this one because it is relatively close. He was back and forth to Salem for the last year and a half. So this would be a nice one for him. So he's very excited about this. He really wishes he could be here.
Yeah, if I could just add something, like, you know, we don't see this as an administrative role. We see this really as a qualified construction management professional that is acting on behalf of the owner in the field, looking for ways to expedite the work, talking with the contractor, saving money, whatever can be done to improve the project all the way through.
Sorry, I jumped too quick. This is the obligatory YS. Right on time, 15 or so minutes. One thing we want to mention right off the bat, we are what's called a full service, Shirley PM for project management. We're not an architectural firm that does this. All of our resources, our estimating, our cost consultant, our economics advisors, they're all in-house. We're a one-stop shop. We do the whole thing. How that differentiates us from everybody else is that we understand the marketplace. Big word in tariffs is right now. Tariffs. I have a slide if we have time to show you about what tariffs mean, what it means for the industry. Quite candidly, I don't care what anybody says. If they stand up in front of you, if they know what it means, I want to hire them because they're a genius, because they're not going to know what it means. We don't know what it means tomorrow. We don't know what it means 12 months from now. So we have economic people. That's all they do. Our estimating people are local to us. They're in-house. They get it. They understand the market. They really do. We're a local team as well. I can't say this enough. We have a long history with the MSBA. My first project when I moved here in 1999 was pre-MSBA. 2004, when the legislation happened that created the MSBA, I was in the room in Governor Romney's office when he came up with the idea. Why? Because I was advising on the big dig and the claims, and that's what I was doing, is handling all the lawsuits on the claims on the big dig. So we were there, it turns out. Successful relationship with designers who do K-12 work and GCs and CMs. No matter which room we know them. We will reach out to the marketplace. We reached out in Littleton, we put out on the street. We had a hard time finding people that wanted to challenge that project. Everybody was busy. Between Mark, Brian, and I, we get on the phone, we called everyone. We opened the door. I had a small project in Cable, Elizabeth, Maine. There's only three or four architects who do schoolwork up there. We called all the Boston firms going. Only an hour and a half drive. I mean, that's nothing. If you do a job in Springfield, it's an hour and a half drive. So come on up. We are able to stir the pot, get people excited. I can also say, and maybe Mr. Hay will agree with me or not, people like to work with us. We're non-confrontational. We try to get things done. We don't believe that there's a solution that requires people screaming and getting lawyers. We sit down and discuss it. There's just no reason. Proven record of success. You've seen it in our proposal. We've probably done as much schoolwork as everybody else. I've probably done as much as everybody except for maybe Mr. Saeda, who Mr. Hay knows well. He was my mentor, still my best friend. He was the first person in Massachusetts to do OPM work in 1979. He goes back then. He's still working at 82. We're ready and available today. I only propose people that are available now. These two have one project apiece. Need to find them something to do. They're sitting on my bench, and as anybody who runs a business knows, what happens when somebody's sitting on your bench? They're costing you money. I need to find them work. I also only chase projects with people that are best fit for those projects. These two are the best fit. Chris is the best fit. Our team is the best fit because it's just the right time for all of us. Our values we put out here, our values are very simple. Turner Townsend, who bought Erie about 3 years ago from CBRE, who's the world's largest real estate company, who we used to work for. No offense to anybody in the real estate business, but we weren't a good fit in it. We were a good fit because we're a public entity. We do nothing but public work. This is our bag. We don't do development work. We don't do a lot of private work. So our core values at Turner Townsend is we work together. It's drilled into us every day in every meeting we ever have. And two, we're all about sustainability things. We live and die by it, but only when it makes sense and only when it's cost effective. We're not one of those firms that's going to push sustainability things on you because it's the right thing in the world to do today. It has to be right for your project and your town. We just bring those resources to you. And I think that's it. The Q&A slide is there because you're going to ask, but it also has the background of a few of our projects we've done. Hard to read, but they were in our proposal. And that's it. We'll leave it at that.
Great. Thank you very much. Very helpful. So we have 11 questions in 3 categories, so 3, and 4. I will give a nod at about the 10-minute mark for each section, just so you know. And then if there's time left at the end, again, you can ask us questions as well.
Perfect.
So
It's a little
first
bit like
section.
Jeopardy.
Yeah.
Thank you for your presentation. The first category is general firm qualifications. And the first question is that our district has stakeholders in 2 communities, which sometimes presents unique challenges. Can you provide an example of how your firm has successfully navigated a project with multiple stakeholders, such as school committees, town officials, and the MSBA?
Absolutely. Again, been doing this a while. I have worked in probably 5 or 6 different regional school districts. I work for vocational schools that might have 13 districts involved. It used to be in the old days, you had to get all 13 towns to vote yes on a school project like the Essex project. Not anymore. Now they can pass it on their own, and if you're in, if you're out, it creates a lot of angst, but that's what they do. Yeah, what do? It's all like Brian said. It's getting people to talk and making sure they're aware of what's going on. Regional school districts can be as easy as bringing the road show, as we call it, and there'll be a road show, and we're glad to do the road show, and all the architects are glad to do the road show. We've done coffees with 6 people for rooms of 200 people, whatever it takes. Making sure that both towns understand what's going on is the key. As part of the feasibility study, it is going to look at the district as a whole because the MSBA has asked you to do that. So we will be part of that process and go through it. But yeah, through all of us, we've all had regional school experience.
Right.
My town's a regional school district, so I know what that's like as well.
All right, next question is to follow on. How will your firm assist the district in engaging with the community and ensuring public support throughout the project's duration?
That's all about a communications plan. You're a large committee. I mean, I don't have to tell you, you live it every day. Subcommittees are huge. Having subcommittees in communications, sustainability, design subcommittees. That's the most important thing. Those committees tend not to make the decisions, but they gather the information and bring it back and report to the full committee, so the full committee makes the decisions. The communications subcommittee is going to be huge. It's going to be everything, and it should have a representative from each town on it to be part of understanding what may work for Essex may not work for Manchester. What works, how you get it out there, may not work for the other town. So it's important to do that. There are going to be no's. Let's face it. if we find if you can keep them informed, there's fewer no's. Which is obfuscating.
Yeah.
Transparency, as we showed on the slide. You want to make sure you can communicate as much as you can, every way that you possibly can. I want to avoid that. Didn't hear about it for both towns. You want to make sure you cast a wide net.
And also, I mean, we're going to rely on you on knowing your community's best, right? Like Chuck mentioned, each community is different. So we'll create whatever communications plan works best for those groups. You know how to reach out to the people in the community. Is it better for evening meetings or morning meetings? Who do we invite? So we'll adjust to that. Public forums are another great thing that we have. Again, yes, every project usually has those people that say, I'm not so sure about that, which is good, really, because it keeps everyone on their toes, right? And it helps us to understand what the issues are for the community as a whole, and take those things into consideration. And public forums are a good way for getting that kind of feedback. Also, I think on your website, you have an email that's already been set up to communicate to the building committee. So suggestion boxes, not everyone has access to the internet. Older people sometimes don't use that. We're important voters. So those are a few of the other scenarios.
At the Shaker Lane Elementary School in Littleton that I'm working on currently once we were hired and once we got the architect on board, they hired a company that we worked with in the past that creates a video that just simplifies the MSBA process to where you are. So they'll talk right up through feasibility very simply. And that was a huge success because we put it on the town's website. We put it on, every place that people could view it. And a lot of people now understood because they're like, oh, we don't understand what's the MSBA, what's this? We put together FAQ sites. One of the frequent questions, people go to that and say, oh, I have a question about, why is it costing this much or why are we doing this or whatever? That constantly gets updated. So there's all kinds of things that we can do.
All right. And the last for the section is, could you describe a project of similar scope and budget that your firm has managed? What were the key successes and lessons learned?
I have a list of them. Let me think. Well, one that both represents yours. I think I'll go to Georgetown. The Pembroke School in Georgetown started out to be a K-5 school. And at that school, if anybody has ever driven through Georgetown, was an old 1970s fly roof where all the water came down in the middle. It was a beautiful design from the 70s, but it didn't work after about 10 years. So the school needed to be replaced. It was key, needed to be replaced. It was open concept with open courtyards in the middle too. It was really unique. The more we get into doing the study, we looked at that K-5 option and say, well, why isn't it K-6? They said, well, we've always had 6 at the high school. Well, but it's a high school. What are you doing over at the high school? That's when we talked to the MSBA and said, hey, let us look at moving the 6th grade out of the high school, middle school, so that we can incorporate it into this. I'm not suggesting that for your town, I'm just giving you experience why we did that. And the reason was it's because we needed to make that school breathe. That school was terribly overcrowded. It was a 6 to 12 high school designed just to be a high school. Now it had 6, 7, 8 in it. So by creating a K to 6 school, bringing those 6th graders back into the elementary school, creating an own wing for them so they felt like they were in a halfway to middle school wing, and able to, again, let that school breathe and understand, and let the MSBA understand why that school is so overcrowded. Once we did that, again, like I said, the town realized, this is great. We've accomplished both our schools in one project and we're done. 30 years, we're done. So I think it's probably the closest to what you're doing. I mean, we've done some others that are similar in size and scope. Although the Littleton one is that size, called Gloucester that Brian came off of is an elementary school. But yeah, I would say that anywhere you can find ways to lessen other buildings and other schools to let them breathe and be more, give the teachers and the administrators more room to do what they have to.
Great, thank you. Now turning over to Gordon.
So, good evening, gentlemen. This is project management approach. Manchester Essex Regional School District believes transparent and effective communication between the project team, school district, and community stakeholders are critical for a successful project. Please discuss your firm's approach to these types of communication, citing several specific examples from past projects.
So we put together a communications plan at the beginning of the project that we'll share with this school building committee to make sure that everyone's on the same page. We have monthly reports, weekly reports that we provide, which also can easily be put onto your website. That gives, the whole history of the project for the community. Those are separate from the MSBA monthly reports that we file. We lead meetings, making sure that the meeting minutes are well cared for and the important information is communicated, following up on it. I mean, it's really through all project stages that we focus on communications. Even during construction, when we have our AEC meetings, we'll make sure that information that most of you will not be there at those meetings is communicated to the school building committee on any relevant issues, keeping you abreast. Also, related to communications, once we get into construction, we will be communicating with the abutters and the community at large, because sometimes there's disruptive actions that need to happen to a community. Maybe there's deliveries, maybe there are noisy or dirty activities that are happening on the construction site. So we send notices on those out in advance so people can adjust. They also have a way of communicating to us if they have any concerns during the construction process. So it's really through all project phases.
It's interesting because when I lecture to Northeastern construction management and project management students and lecture to Wentworth students, I always use this expression. They get a big laugh out of it. They ask me, what's project management? It's two things. For those of you who ever coached youth soccer, it's herding cats. It's really what it is. We're trying to keep everybody together and everything moving. It's what you do when you go through this. You're trying to keep everybody together. We're also the orchestrator. We have plans that help run the program to keep it going smooth and clean as we can through the process. That's project management. I always told everybody the number one thing that you'll learn is you'll get a t-shirt when you start working for us that has a bullseye on it. That's our job. Our job's in front is to stand in front of it. We're going to answer the hard questions. We're going to take the shots. We're going to take the phone calls. We're going to do all of that when you get started. We're going to stand in front of a room full of people that don't really like us. And we're going to sit there and we're going to give them the information clear and openly. We're the ones that stand in front of it for you.
But as you go through the modules of the process with the MSBA, you get through feasibility, you get through schematic, the project has to pass. You have to get a project funding agreement and it has to pass. So communication is critical, as we said before with the other slide, from the very beginning of this job. Once you hire an OPM, once you hire an architect, blitzkrieg, get out there, let everybody know, this is the process, this is what we're working to, these are the dates. Keep that in mind in 2026, this is the town meeting that's going to vote for it. All that is very, very important. We don't get past that, we're not into construction and worrying about anything else. That's vital to get to that point and get the vote passed.
And we can also be a liaison for the building committee, right? You're a large committee, you can't always communicate to other parties. So whether that's reaching out to town departments or whether it's fielding questions that are coming in on the project, we can be that for you, that communications piece.
Okay, I have this is my favorite question. How does your firm handle change orders and what strategies do you implement to minimize cost overruns and scope creep?
My favorite question. Let me think it's one of my favorite. Scope creep is not always the fault of the architect. I say that not because there's architects in the room, but because it's true. Scope creep comes from the owner side sometimes. The owner says, I wish we could have this, I wish we could have this, I wish we could have this. The architect goes, I want to help them, I want to please them, I want to see if I can get them there. That's scope creep. Our job is to sit, and we do this from the very early stages in programming. When we're sitting in the room with the community and sitting in the room with the building committee members, I tell every one of us, we'll sit in the back of the room. We're the ones that raise our hands and go, nope, can't have that. Nope, can't have that. We're the ones that say no. Why? Because we want to? No, we don't want to say no. We want to say yes. We're going to give you everything you want. We say no because it's not in your budget. So it's our job to be, again, the ones with the bullseyes, to be the bad guys, to say, yeah, you can't have that. But let us look and see if we can't trade that off for something else. Never are we going to trade an educational piece. That's the key. We always remind everybody in every meeting, remember what you're doing this for. You're building a school for kids that are going to come here. You're building a school for the superintendent, the principal. and administrators can do their job. It's all about students. And we take it every step of the way. Sometimes we look and say, that's a really nice to have, but guess what? What does that bring educationally to the project? Now, when it gets to change order from the field, that's what our guys do. Our guys are gonna go through that change order with a fine tooth comb. They're also gonna have real quality eyes. I had a guy on a school project in Winthrop, Mass. He made one of the largest contractors in the world, Gilbane, tear out a set of concrete steps 6 times at their cost.
He had a target on his back. I
They,
think.
they would call me and say,
Yeah,
we're
yeah,
gonna kill him. We're gonna kill him. I'm going, oh, that must mean he's doing his job then. No, it's serious. That's what we look for. So, but before you get to change orders, it's analyzing what's the change, what is driving the change. By being able to, one from 3 architectural backgrounds and our whole team of construction management, getting into the drawings at an early stage, we're looking for those holes. We're looking for those things that could drive costs up. When we go through the estimates, we go through the design reviews, we're looking for things that might draw costs up. We're looking at what the economic conditions are going to be when you bid this in 18, 24 months. What are those cost drivers? Have that problem now, looking at a project for Cape Elizabeth. They're all upset about tariffs, they're all concerned about it, and they should be. Because if the tariffs take place on March 1st, and Winthrop's going to bid this summer, we're looking at a 25% increase in steel. 25%. Most people, that's a job killer. That's a project killer. We're saying, no, let's look at some other things. Look at timber frames. Look at some other things. Let's try to work around that and find another solution. That's how we look at change orders. We look for ways to do those things.
And if I could also add something, relative to change orders, I agree with everything that Chuck is saying about, knowing what's in the design documents, knowing what's required. But there's also something about setting initial standards in the relationships with the contractors on site. Letting them know that if something is warranted, we're going to be fair. But don't come with unnecessary change orders that aren't merited, because that's going to set us off on the wrong track and we'll push back very hard. But when you have that kind of good relationship, you end up having better pricing. You don't waste your time reviewing unnecessary change orders, fighting back and forth, having adversarial conditions. Rather, you can find a good satisfactory arrangement where costs are fair. If something wasn't included, if it wasn't in the design documents, we're going to pay for that. And we budget for those things early on during the budgeting process, making sure that we have adequate contingencies during constructions, also for the owner to cover those things. Our goal is to return money back to you out of those contingency funds, but we have them in case we need them, because there are always unexpected issues that come up during a project. And especially now, with the construction market changes, we have to address those as well.
And the construction delivery method, construction manager at risk or design bid build is awful different too when it comes to changes. When you got somebody that comes in early, helps you look at the market, looks at things, gives you a guaranteed maximum price for the project, works with you from, middle of design all the way to the end. A little bit different than someone that gets a set of documents on the street, looks at them, starts the project, and his first thing is change orders. So those different dynamics should come into play with the delivery method.
Just so you know, we're at about 10 minutes in this section. We're still good on time
One more
overall.
question. How does your firm incorporate life cycle cost analysis and value engineering into the project planning process to optimize long-term operational costs?
If I've learned anything from doing this as long as I have, we don't look at it as value engineering, it's value management. We're looking for ways to reduce costs without taking away value in a project. It's important. I know it sounds like we're wordsmithing, but it's truly not. It's value management. It's looking for the best solution to a difficult problem. Value engineering is what the industry knows it as. We just approach it a little different. We do it as we're saying from the early stages of the design side, looking for solutions to things that potentially cost. We don't want to get down to the various steps of the MSBA process when we're putting prices on things and find out we're 25% over budget, 10% over budget, 5%. We don't ever want to get there. We want to know way ahead of time. We're creeping a little here. We're always checking those estimates. We're always doing it. Again, because I'm in-house, I don't have to pay an outside firm exorbitant fees. I just pick up the phone and say, hey, our lead estimator is a guy named Greg. Everybody knows we're gonna call Greg. Every day we're gonna call Greg. We all laugh because Greg's kind of a nut, but he's a numbers guy. So we sit with him and said, Greg, they're looking at maybe making this change. What are you seeing in the market? Oh, don't do that. Do this instead. They're in tune because they're part of our project management team. They're not just cost estimators looking at these things in a vacuum. They're looking and they're in the conversations with us throughout the entire process. So the value engineering is every single step of the way.
And that's it for me.
All right, a few more questions, just 3 or 4, just technical expertise and innovation. One unique aspect of this project is the aging condition of the school's aging infrastructure. What approach would your firm take when considering feasibility analysis and evaluation of renovation versus new? And do you have any specific examples from the past to demonstrate?
Absolutely. First and foremost, one thing that's really very positive for us coming into the project is that you had a very involved facility study done. Habib generally does a pretty good job and goes through it and understands that. When we've worked with them in the past, we usually have pretty good luck of looking at seeing what they've done. We reviewed it, pretty extensive, very involved. Did they get everything? I think if they were sitting here, they'd say, yeah, we hope we did, but it happened. You're right, the infrastructure is aging, and that's not just the building. It could be all the way from the street, all the way to the septic, all the way out. It could be all of it. So during the design phase, the early stages of the design phase, when we're doing the original concepts of looking at it, we're looking at saying, okay, if you site it next to this building, what are you facing? Well, you're gonna need a new water service. You're gonna need a new that. You're gonna need that. There are projects we've done where the building is completely on septic. Not a normal thing, but let's face it, I think you probably do. I don't know for sure, but we had to put a full septic system in Georgetown because there's no town water and there's town water. There's no town sewers. So you have to look at those things. That's part of each one of the options. That's part of making sure that each one of the options have all that information baked into it. So the infrastructure is one thing. Infrastructure of the school is another thing. I walked a lot of schools. Would this building be salvaged and saved? Sure. At what cost? We have to analyze it. We have to look through it. We have to go through it. We never come into these studies with a preconceived idea that this should be a new school because we don't know how you feel. So it's crazy to say that out loud, but we're going to look at every aspect of it and say, okay, you want to save this wing? You want to save the whole building? Let's start pricing it from the earliest stages of concept. We'll start putting square foot numbers on things. Architects don't like to do that with us sometimes, and we tell them, don't worry, that's on us, because again, my estimators are in-house, they're local, I can pick up the phone, they're down the hall, it's easy to do, I can come up with numbers quicker. A lot of firms have to go to an outside agency, we don't have to do that, so we can give you some feedback on costs as it comes to renovation or additions as you go through a permit.
But an existing building like this, when you start the PDP process and you sign it on board, it has to work with your education plan.
Absolutely.
If it does not work with your education plan, that's going to tell you exactly what path you're going down. Doesn't mean 21st century learning. Classrooms aren't big enough. Ceilings aren't high enough. We can't get with the structure, the fire suppression system in. Clearly, the HVAC's got to go. You know, any kind of hazardous materials, all that is part of the existing conditions, but it has to mirror the educational plan or it just won't work.
If you listen to the MSBA board meeting today, there's one person on the MSBA board. She asked the same question and every single thing. She's one of the most amazing people I ever met in my life. She's all about educational plans. You create the educational plan first. Superintendent creates the educational plan first. We don't, and the architect does. Superintendent, the administrators, they create the educational plan. That's where everything springs from. You do it the other way, you look at a building first and then try to squeeze an educational plan into it, it will not work. It just does not work. The MSBA will immediately call you out and say, go back and do your ed plan.
And the designer is going to help the district. They're going to have an educational planner on board or in-house. they'll work with you. We were very successful with Littleton, Shaker Lane Studio G, worked with a company that had an in-house application planner as well. We did get compliments this morning. Just this morning got voted into schematic design. And Terry Kwan, the woman that Chuck is referring to, had some very, very nice things to say about the education plan. It starts with the superintendent, the principal, the school district, but it gets support from the designer and putting that together and massaging it to the point that the MSBA is going to enjoy it.
And what I would also just add is that although there are always exceptions, when you have a facility of this age, a lot of things have changed. So, walking through this building twice, I think, the building has been well maintained and it serves as a great school still for the community. But there are shortcomings because things change. Educational programs change. That's the first thing. But even if systems are partially operational, once you start making adjustments to the building, we have to use the current codes, right? So those have changed drastically over the recent years. So once you start looking at that, you're looking at return on investment, you end up with a result. So even if it does go in a direction where you want to do something new, it's still very valuable to go through that process because that needs to be explained to everyone in the community. People that have been here, who have gone to school here and say, well, I went to school here, it worked for me, the kids are going to school there, why do we need to pay anything more? That conversation needs to be had. And part of that information will come from that exploration process.
So a couple more, just a couple last questions here. I think we're coming up against time.
We're good because they technically have till 8.
Perfect.
So.
Can you describe a situation where your firm had to address unexpected structural and/or environmental issues on a project and how it was resolved?
Yes, I'm smiling because there's a very unique one that happened. I hate bringing up Georgetown. But while we were doing the early stages of the preferred solution for what a new building would look like on that site, you have to do an environmental test report very, very early up front. We did an environmental test report and they found arsenic in the soil. Everybody lost their minds. Everybody went crazy. We all live on the North Shore. Guess what? We all have arsenic in our soil on the North Shore. Why? Because it comes from the ground. It's naturally occurring. But because it got elevated to the point where it's making everybody crazy, they brought in environmental engineers. They brought in environmental specialists to look at all of this. And the environmental specialists, of course, are saying, oh, well, you should cap the land. You're going to put 2 feet of topsoil on top of everything, the whole bit. I went, slow down. I had my soil tested because I had young kids at that point. I had my water tested. Arsenic in both my water and my ground. Okay, so what do? We called in the head of the DEP because I had a relationship with him from a previous project that was not as smooth as that in the city of Boston. He came up and he brought in a coffee can of dirt, put it right on the table. He says, everybody just calm down. You'd have to eat 6 of these jars, cans of dirt every single day for the rest of your life to see an impact from arsenic in your body. And everyone's like, what? He goes, it's naturally occurring. Your kids are playing outside in their backyard. Trust me, reading the dirt. Everybody went, oh, so it's not that bad. No, we need to manage it, but it's not that bad. So that's an environmental issue. I had another unique problem. It's very unique. Where I had a project that had a very rare kind of frog. A frog. Now, there's wetlands everywhere around here, and we have to make sure we handle that. We had to put in a frog highway. Oh my, storm drains system that the frogs could hop through as they made it. How would they do that? They do it by the moon. Frogs hopping through a pipe. How's they going to see the moon? We put glass block manhole so the frogs could see the thing coming through there. Why didn't we do it? Well, we couldn't have got a permit if we didn't do it. So we did it. What did it really cost in the long run? Well, we needed the stormwater piping anyhow. It cost us just the manhole covers for glass block. And it wasn't traffic, it was in a field. You approach this, just find a way to manage it. You just go through them. So yes, I've done frog.
But as far as unknowns go, when you get into, say, you're gonna tear down half this building, put an addition on it, the rest of it, or whatever, you come across an issue, there's contingencies that are built into the budget for unknowns, because we don't hold our crystal ball up to say, oh, well, there's gonna be a structural issue here, or we're gonna find something in the ground, we can't, see what's going on there. So contingencies are built in to cover that.
And structural issues also, sometimes it's just giving things a second look.
Yeah.
On a project that I'm on right now, we had a geotechnical report that required us to remove an excessive amount of soil from under the building. And just after experience, I guess, something just didn't seem quite right that was necessary. So we had a peer review. And we were able to find cost savings and come up with a good structural design that would support the building without having to do that. So sometimes it's just going through that extra step.
Appreciate that. Could you describe your firm's methodology, and you touched on this a little bit already, evaluating between construction delivery methods, seam at risk versus design build for this particular project?
Yeah, a lot of people don't like when I answer this question, okay, but I'm gonna be answering it honestly, like I will always do every step of the way with you. Too early to tell. Can we do both? Absolutely. Are there advantages to both? Absolutely. Difficult project on an occupied site that may need what's called early bid packages for site work or for this, that, and the other thing, for steel deliveries. If we can buy the steel before we might see tariffs, then we'll buy the steel early. Seam at risk allows you to do that. HVAC equipment used to be a big thing. You couldn't get HVAC equipment. You couldn't get it for the longest time. Why? Because not the mechanical boxes itself, because of the controllers. All the controllers were coming from overseas and you couldn't get them. Everybody was busy and you couldn't get the actual physical hardware, the electrical hardware to run mechanical units. So what did we do? We ordered the mechanical units early, stored them. Cheaper to store them than to try to buy them when you really need them. That's seam at risk. Seam at risk allows you to do some unique things. But design bid, but it comes with a cost. On an average, it's between 3% and 5% sometimes. It's an increased cost. So, but there could be advantages for doing that outweigh that 3 to 5%. Design bid build, traditional, everyday. There's only a few firms that do it. I think there's only 5 or 6 that would do a project that's around 100 million right now. I'm not suggesting that's what that costs. I'm just using it as a ballpark number. There's only a few firms that do it. I prefer it. Seam at risk is there's a premium for it. Sometimes it's not always the best way. I can tell you the SAM firms love us and some hate us. I did the first seam at risk project allowed under the legislation for school in Woburn. Gilbane needed it because I told them up front, you're going to put contingencies in there called CM contingencies. Guess what? That's not your money. Oh, sure it is. That's what the law is. No. That's not your money. I don't care what the law says. It's not your money. They like to think that CM contingency is their money to spend. It's not. Why? Because it's tax dollars. Nobody can spend tax dollars. People that it was awarded to. Nobody can spend those tax dollars, but the building committee authorized by the voters by the town. They looked at me and said, "You're nuts." So every change order through same contingency is going to go to the mayor. Every single one. Now, the mayor and I had a deal. He can give me authorization of a certain amount of money, and we were able to push things through really quickly. Oh, but they hated it. They hated it because we treated that way. It's tax dollars. It's your money and my money because it's MSBA money, which is a penny on the sales tax. That comes from retail.
One of the differences, you select the CM at risk.
Yeah.
You interview them, you select whether you want. For a design bid build, general contractor, you get the lowest responsible bidder responding to the set of documents that was put on the street.
But the two bids pre-qualified.
So, but there's pros and cons to both.
So you can see there's even disagreements between us. Depends on what your project is. We find out what your project is, we'll have that discussion. And there'll be plenty of time to beat it around.
That's great. Last question. What experience does your firm have in sustainable design and construction, including adherence to LEED for schools?
This gentleman.
We have about 5 minutes.
I don't think he can do it 5
I was
minutes.
gonna mention
Problem.
As I mentioned earlier, I was involved with the state, with the utility taking care of energy efficiency programs and creating pretty much mass save. I was responsible for new construction, commercial new construction, going out to architects and engineers as advocates and saying, hey, the utility's going to give you money if you put these things into your project to save energy because they're trying to save their production. They don't want to have to produce anymore. So if we go to these people and have them reduce the amount. So I've worked on, I can't tell you how many jobs. I was there for almost 10 years. I left just as we were starting the EUI standard. We worked with Eversource to run up the EUI standard of what needs to happen. So MSBA is built big on site orientation for solar. They want to make sure that all sustainability things for either for materials or energy efficiency or net zero ready, all those terms that are out there, all those things have costs to them too. It depends on what the community wants to do. If you've got a mandate that you want to be fossil free in 10 years, this project being brand new should probably fall into that. If not, if you're a stretch community, there's certain things you have to meet. MSBA standard now is LEED Silver. For the certain things which are silver, we just came out with a new energy code, and that puts the bar way up there too. So there's a lot of experience that we've had with dealing with projects like this and getting to them. But again, do you want an all electric building? Do you want a net zero building? Do you want a solar? Do you want ground source heat pumps? Et cetera, et cetera. We can work with you on navigating exactly what you'd like to do if you want to be off fossil free in all levels of sustainability we can address.
Mark and I worked on a project that was with Net National Grid in the Acton Boxborough School. It was a different firm at that time, but the Acton Boxborough School is a very unique school. 75 ground source geothermal heat wells, full solar on all of the building, all of the roofs, the parking lots, everything. There's full solar. Battery backup, if they get approved by the town, because somebody says they're gonna burst on fire and everybody's gonna die. Well, that's not true. They're gonna show science and we'll go from there. On-site water and on-site septic. They're completely off. This is a huge elementary school. They're completely off the grid. There's no wires coming into the building. After the grid wires, you bring it in just for backup. All you have to do is throw the switch. It's not being run that way. It's a very unique building. It's not fully net zero, but it will be once the battery backup gets approved. And the battery backup is nothing but a truckload of Tesla batteries that are remote from the school. I only say Tesla because that's who's making them at that size right now. Nobody else.
Yeah, it's a net, also to be net zero, but it's also a net water and a net waste school, which is like the first in the state. So depending on the appetite of what the town wants and what the towns want and how they want to approach this project, we can fairly help you on any path.
Yep. Yeah, it's about finding the right fit. We just finished a net zero building up in Newburyport. You know, that was a good fit for them. The LEED is also important because you can get additional reimbursements through the MSBA program. So there's a lot of things to consider.
But it's more than just trying to get that nice shiny plaque building. It's about what works.
Which Newburyport school?
It was a school,
East Veteran with LEED Gold.
Paul Bosser.
Yeah, you lost. East Veteran. Oh, Newburyport is a fire station.
Oh,
Which is very unique to have a net zero fire station. Because that's a huge energy draw the second they open those doors. So.
High-speed doors, full solar on the roof. Cool.
Well, thank you very much. We have less than 1 minute. We will be deciding tonight. Do you have any very quick question for us at all?
Nope, other than to say we're ready to sign a contract. I was the first OPM to ever sign the MSBA contract. Here, the firm said they weren't gonna do it.
There's 20 of you here who may not be able to answer this, but what I typically like to ask is, what keeps you up at night about this project? What are your major concerns? Don't have to answer. Once you hire us, you can answer. Okay.
That's what we wanted.
Excellent.
And we'd love to work with you.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Wish you a lot of luck, know what you're going through and. Sorry. Don't be kidding.
It is.
We're ready to go, right?
Yeah, we're good. Yeah. So welcome. Thank you for being here tonight. Congratulations on being one of the finalists. So we're grateful to have you here and get to meet you. So we will, you'll have about an hour. We will start with a brief introduction around the room, and then you'll have 20 to 30 minutes for your presentation. At about the 20-minute or 15 to 20-minute mark at a natural break, I will give you a heads up that that's where you are for a time check. After your presentation, we have questions, standardized questions in 3 categories. I'll give a 10-minute warning or so into each category. If there's time left at the end, we'll be glad to take questions from you as well. All right. So with that, we'll introduce ourselves.
Mike Gerhart.
Ruth Brink, Teresa Whitman, School Committee.
Jen Hockerman.
Kim Provo, principal.
Tyler Burton.
Gordon Brewster.
Barry O'Brien.
And Kim.
Charlie Hay. Henry Ottinger.
Tim McDonald.
Michelle Cresta, Director of Finance, Pam Bowden, Superintendent. Welcome.
Thank you.
Like us to start?
Please.
Well, first of all, thank you. It's late, it's 8:00. It's a big crowd. We'll try to move through this quickly. We're excited to be here and talk about the Essex Elementary School. My name is Jim Rogers. I'm the principal of Left Field. I've got a really strong team tonight. We'll get to know one another and we'll introduce ourselves real quick right now. Jay, you want to start?
Yeah, Jay Faxon, I'm MEP for Left Field.
David Sandin, Project Executive, Left Field.
Brian Johnson, on-site rep.
Lena Long, Senior Project Manager.
Brian David.
Dan McSweeney, Cost Manager.
So I started Left Field about 17 years ago. We're a locally owned firm with 49 employees. We have a lot of MSBA experience. In fact, we are doing the largest single school projects in Massachusetts, Rhode Island, and New Hampshire. So we're very proud of that. We have quite a bit of MSBA experience, which you'll see in a few slides. And we do both design to build and chapter 129 procurement. And we have a full breadth and depth of services provided. Brian.
So, Brian Dakin, Project Director. My background originally is in architecture, spent about 10, 12 years, mostly doing public sector work. For the last 15 or so, I've been doing work on the OPM side, most of it with Jim, and focused primarily on MSBA schools, going from one MSBA school for the last 12, 15 years to the next. So very happy to be here.
Awesome. Lena Long, I've been in the construction industry for 18 years, started as a construction manager, and for the last 7 years, I've been an owner's project manager.
Brian Johnson, I have over 20 years in the construction industry, both on the commercial and residential side. I've been with Left Field for 5 or 6 years now. And most of my residential experience is right here in Cape Ann. I'm from Gloucester.
David Sandin, Project Executive. I'll be acting as the backstop for Brian and Lena. I'm trained and educated as an architect. And then after a while, I joke, I went to the dock side and became a construction manager for many years and then moved to the OPM side. I've been in the industry for 30 plus years. I used to be the youngest guy in the room. And now I'm not the youngest guy. Thank you. Glad to be here.
Thanks for making me feel old. Jay Faxon, I'm one of Jim's MEP persons. Been with them 11 years, I guess, maybe more, 12. I've been in the HVAC industry my whole life, 50 years. And worked as a service technician, been in the construction business, come from a family of tradesmen. Happy to be here. Thank you.
I'm Dan McSweeney, Cost Manager with Left Field. My background's in accounting, but I've been in the OPM industry for close to 15 years now. So my role in this project will be manage the project budget and also fully manage the MSBA pro pay reimbursement system input. So I can manage that 100%, take that burden off the district. My goal is for you to get your MSBA reimbursements timely every month. In simplest terms, I'll be your reimbursement guy.
And just one more moment. And Adele had a medical procedure tonight, couldn't be here. She's our educational liaison. So she was a former superintendent of Bristol Aggie. She'll plug into this project with the educational plan. She'll help with that. She'll help with programming. And she often translates, once we get into construction, she helps communicate with the teachers and administrators what we're doing on the construction side. So she's a big help to the process. I apologize she couldn't be here. This was a quick slide just to show where folks live. This is a North Shore team. They're all within 15 or 20 minutes of the site. So I wanted to show that very quickly so you got that impression. And then we're going to blow through these very quickly. These are our elementary schools that we're working on. Go back one more slide. And I just want to show that, if you look at the kind of ribbon at the top, we've got a few there that are multiple enrollments that are, similar to what folks are talking about, grade configuration changes. On the next slide, some more elementary schools, Driscoll and Pierce, which are both in Brookline. That middle one, the Pierce School, we're building a new elementary school K through 8 over an existing parking garage in between town hall and the library. So it's in an urban setting. So needless to say, it's a challenging project. Next slide, please. Dan. There's 3 middle schools we have to be working on. The Gavin Middle School in Canton, the Pickering Middle School in Tingsboro. Just part of our experience. Next slide. We work on some major high schools. We're doing, we just finished Waltham High School, which was a $375 million high school. Durfee and the work were finished several years ago. And Revere is one of the largest ones we're working on now at $500 million, with Wakefield and Agawam in process as well. Here's an example of an ad reno that we've done. Those were all kind of new construction projects. This was a project that was Massachusetts Regional High School. If you look, you can see through the picture, there's kind of an orange roof and a kind of a gray roof. And the orange is the new part of the building with the gray being existing. So we had a web leave rather that the new building in and around the existing gray building while it was occupied. So I just showed that as an example of the type of experience we have as a team.
So this is my slide again, right? Carlos Montanez is another MEP specialist at work. We've been together for 30 years. We're friends. And one of the things that my primary goal is to ensure that you guys get a good working building. Contractors do their job, they install your equipment correctly. We review the equipment, make sure that you get what you want. We want to make sure that it's serviceable, easy to access. I must tell you, some of the schools, the elementary schools we're building right now, really coming out nice. We get some real high-end stuff. I'm catching a lot of mechanical or engineering or architectural conflicts with the mechanical stuff. While it's being built, it gets repaired, gets resolved, and the buildings work as they are intended. When I was in the trade, I can't tell you how many buildings I've gone to my whole career and heard the same story over and over again. This building has never worked right since the day it was built. And now I know why, since I've been, So it's a pleasure to be here. I really like doing what we're doing. We're turning out some really, really nice, solid, viable buildings, energy efficient. And regardless of what kind of equipment you decide to put in, we'll make sure it's installed correctly.
So we think Jay adds a lot of value to the team. So, the engineer will come up and look at the install and they, might have a half a page worth of items. Jay will go out there the next day and come back with 2 or 3 pages of items that when I look at it, I often comment, how could we have put the ceiling in without addressing these things? The other important aspect of Jay is he'll help train your staff. And as Jay used the word high end, I think what he meant to say is probably sophisticated. They're very sophisticated systems that we're putting in. And to turn them over to the school staff is a challenging and daunting task. So Jay sticks around.
I do. I attend all of the training classes, and if you guys, I help you guys with any questions.
We've had Jay stay on for 90 days on a project where we've actually hired a new, wrote the job description, participated in the interviews, hired a new facilities person for a district, stuck around, helped train for 90 days. So we understand, again, what you're up against, and we have folks here that will help in the transition. That's all.
I'm walking staff through these new schools during construction and showing them where all the ins and outs are before the ceilings are even put in, the walls are put up and everything. And the staff loves it.
Yeah. We get phone calls from clients that have moved on to different districts, and they'll say, don't tell anyone I'm calling you. We're doing a project with someone else, but we need Jay. And Jay goes and helps.
Wherever they need me, I go.
So we wanted to use this slide to sort of give you examples of how we work together. I know we have a bunch of people here. A few general points. One, you'll notice this is the team. We will be on straight through the project. There aren't other people that get subbed in at a later point. And we've all worked together on multiple projects recently. We've done 1 million projects together. I talked to the folks standing behind me, probably just as much as I end up talking to my wife. In the end, we spend 8-9 hours on the phone every day. This is laid out in the MSBA modules, and really what we wanted to get across was a few points. One, you'll notice that Lena as the senior project manager, myself as the project director, are on straight through. Right through the end until we're done closing this project out. If Lena knows about something, I know about it. If I know about something, Lena knows about it. We really work hand in hand. We talk every day, and we're really a team. David's experience and Jim's experience, you'll see, we tried to use the size of these mug shots as sort of representative of direct involvement, but David and Jim are always lurking in the background, as they are now.
Mine's bigger because of my head.
And always there, just as Dan's always there. You'll see that there are some phases as we get more into closeout where Dan becomes sort of a prime project member because we're really trying to recoup that entire MSBA grant. And as we go through the initial modules, the feasibility study modules, we wanted to show that we'll jump right on board to help you hire an architect. And then as we get into the feasibility study, you'll see Adele being key there. Adele will be attending all of the educational visioning sessions, all meetings with staff. And Adele really helps translate the educational goals of the building into what Lena and I need to set up a real project schedule, a real project budget. As we go closer into detailed design, Jay and Brian get more and more involved, technical reviews, reviewing MEP systems, sustainability approaches with Jay, with Brian, construction reviews, logistics reviews, hiring the CM. So their involvement ramps up as we get into modules 6 and 7. By the time we're in project closeout, we're all still here. We feel like we've, at that point, been able to make good on the goals. This is sort of a general approach to the MSBA modules, just to give you a flavor of who does what. I want to stress that, Lena and myself, Lena is listed as day-to-day, but Lena and I will be involved with every piece of this and make sure that not only our team, but the entire design team, school building committee staff, admin, folks from the town, everybody's on the same page about the project. That's really our primary role, is sort of help conduct the orchestra that is the town, the project, et cetera. Lena's actually going to walk you through a little bit more of a detailed schedule that we've laid out for the feasibility study itself.
Great, thanks, Brian. So as Brian stated, we're going, so we took the dates from the RFS and laid out the next few modules of the MSBA modules, taking you right to the designer selection process. So as soon as we're brought on board, we'll start writing the designer RFS and help you get that right out. And then the next few months are through the designer selection process, which brings us from there to down to town meeting. So we know Essex has an annual town meeting in April. It's at the end of April. I'm sorry, Manchester at the end of April and Essex in May. So we'll be lining up the project scope and budget agreement and the funding to assist you on that effort to bring you to the Springtown meetings. So we know many of you have been through this process before, so I didn't walk through every item, but happy to go back on this slide when the questions come up, and happy to speak to more of the details of that.
But it's about a 2-year duration from hiring of the architect.
Correct, yep, 24 months, yep.
So another item we'd like to hit the ground running with, if we were to be engaged on this project, is site analysis. And that starts with a thorough analysis while we're out helping you hire an architect to understand everything we need about the site, because so much of it relates to establishing a good master project schedule, understanding what permitting impact there might be. So we know that it's a relatively unchallenging site. We've seen sites that are a lot more challenging. It does have some wetlands features that we need to follow up on. Topography looks pretty basic. And we feel that regardless of the 3 main project types the MSBA's protocol makes you look at, we feel like there is a developable area on the fields and on the playgrounds and parking. If you're required to study a code upgrade, in the scenario of a code upgrade, there'd be modular classrooms out there. Nobody likes that. Nobody likes code upgrades too, because they don't really address the programmatic deficiencies and space deficiencies of this building. You would have to study an ad reno. For an addition renovation, we'd be out into that green area somewhere, and we'd be renovating some portion of the building. And for an all new construction, we think that's the island behind there that we potentially could work in, potentially gain access off the side road, which would allow us to keep the school operations on your own island in the front of the site, to not mess with pickup drop off, not mess with parking. We can effectively divide the site in two, not have students crossing where construction comes and goes, and do our best to stay out of school operations here as we be building this. But there are a number of items that we'd like to follow up on. There's some relatively complex zoning overlay districts that I was looking at a bit up here, and we were talking about. There's the potential for Article 97 to come in with that field, depending on how that field is deeded, how it's maintained. Is it a protected park? Would we have to go through the Article 97 process? So we like to jump into this stuff early because, again, so much of it relates to establishing a schedule we can all live by. If we're going to have a MEPA process or an Article 97 process, that's got to be designed in right from the get-go. I do not think, and I hope this wouldn't be a site that is subject to MEPA, but it is something that we'd be looking at right out of the gate. Lastly, we're used to doing this for any site. Another discussion we would start is, I know the RFPs mentioned there potentially could be other sites to look at. We absolutely do these sort of exercises for any site you, the client, the building committee wants to look at. We've had projects where this is a little out of control, but we looked at over a dozen sites and had to whittle them down. But I would say that being concise with the sites we look at and we have the architect looked at is important because you really want them to focus in on the right solution for the things that are most likely. But we're used to figuring this out and figuring out the schedule. We're used to looking at other sites, comparing and contrasting. And
Right, I could just add, when Lena was presenting the schedule, there's a certain duration that we're kind of subject to the schedule of the design selection panel of the MSBA. Sometimes it can go, I wouldn't say it ever goes quickly, but sometimes it can extend out based on the MSBA schedule. So a lot of times what we can do is we can do a lot of work ahead of time. So when the designer gets on board, they're ready to really get running. So, because some of our colleagues in the industry will say they don't do anything until the architect gets on board. So you're stagnant for 4 months, where we like to roll up our sleeves and really get involved. So again, when the architect gets on board, you don't have to look at this or this or this. We've already done them.
Just so you know, you're at about 17 minutes.
I'm going to move over here. I'm going to go real quickly. Somewhat without this person, other than Dan there tonight. I know everyone's probably looking at the bottom number, 64 million to 72 million. So what we did quickly is we understand you have different grade configurations, you have different options you can look at. And as Brian said, this could go further out depending on how many sites we look at. I just happen to say, let's do grades K to 5, new construction, 250 enrollment. The MSBA square footage net would be about 33,000 square feet. I assume they'd be 4,000 square feet that would not fall into the MSBA template, we'll call it. So then, the grossing factor, you're at assumed gross square feet of 56,000 square feet. The cost per square foot of construction, we plugged in 825. Collectively, we kind of debated that number. There's an elementary school out there in the pipeline right now that's at 950. There's some that are almost at 900. That number is very much subject to site work, decisions that are made during the design process. So that can fluctuate. Escalation, I'm carrying at 4% per year. That's included kind of a concept. There might be some volatility with tariffs. Soft costs, we have a plug of 25%. And, we don't know what we're going to do with modular classrooms if they're needed or not. So, we're at a range of anywhere from 64 to 72 million. And again, if we want to get into this during Q&A, glad to speak to it.
Right here, just on the left-hand side, is a sample of our project budgets that we track in real time along with coordination project team, and they'll update the SBC on the project finances throughout the life of the project. The right-hand side is a quick screenshot of one of the many tabs on the MSBO toolkit system, which is their reimbursement software. So again, I can manage this fully. I've been working in the system for the last 15 years or so. So I know all the ins and outs. So I can do all the input, track the monthly audits, and make sure you're getting your reimbursements timely every month and year. getting your eligible dollars, maximum.
So we know community outreach and community engagement is extremely important. We will absolutely assist you in every way that we can, equipping you with factual information that you need to get out to the stakeholders. I'm just going to go quickly to the Wakefield Memorial High School slide. There's a QR code on there. That's an example of a project that's ongoing right now. And there's a lot of examples of different things that we've done on that project to get the information out there. There's two slides with monthly reports. I'll just go quickly on those. So we provide monthly reports to you, the SBC. We'll upload it to the website. We can also maintain the website for you as well if that's something that the SBC would like. Yeah, I think that takes it for
Finally, what I consider the exciting part. This is like what? What's that?
You have 30 seconds.
So this is an example of like one of my responsibilities, like daily reporting, just to construction activities, amongst other things I'll be doing. Monthly recs, commissioning with the MVP and J envelope. But one of the things I really strive to be is the bridge between construction and the school committee, as well as the school. Because depending on the site, we might be right in the backyard of the school, so communication is key. And then for the school committee, a lot of people I know are in the industry here, but not all of you are. So some people may want to say, hey, I'd love to see steel go up. Give me a call and we'll have you come out. Or you might say, I just want to check on progress because I'm an engineer and I know a lot about it. So please call me, come on out. We'll get you out there as much as we can. Doesn't have to be one of those scheduled one. It can just be week of. Other than that,
Brian is a very, very talented carpenter, and he's a extremely knowledgeable construction guy when it comes to building these buildings. And I enjoy walking. We've been walking together for years now. And he points out a lot of things construction wise that I wouldn't have picked up, and I point out the MVP stuff to him that he doesn't pick up. So
I've learned a ton from Shay. I mean, but we are our fourth school together, and
yeah.
It's crazy. I mean, I'm not considered myself an MVP person, so I'm just like, hey, I need you out here tomorrow. It's like, see you tomorrow.
Yep.
So, why I feel, I think, one of the big reasons I like to say we're a little different than the rest is the expert personnel we bring in. We have a Jay that, can talk about the MEP systems. We have a Dan that can help, with the reimbursement, which is critical, right, during the course of the project and as part of closeout. And even Adele, bring Adele in as an education specialist. So, well, we have a great core, a great team here. What we do is they're the day-to-day folks, but we come and plug in that expertise, over the course of a project. And I think that's what differentiates us a little bit from our competitors. And I'll say this too, as we mentioned, we're a locally independently owned firm. And, we're not a national firm, so you'll all have my cell phone number. So if there's any issues that come up, I'm a very hands-on owner. If you talk to most of your other clients, I think you'll find that out. I hope you felt some of the excitement from the team tonight. We try to move fast, quickly through this. So I know we
Nobody leaves this company either. If they do leave, they come back and leave.
We'll say that's true. In
For the 10 years I've been here anyway.
in the 17 years I've owned the firm, we've only lost 3 or 4 people. So when the team says this is who you're going to have in the project, this is literally who you're going to have in the project.
Sorry, I'm using my time.
We brought a village. I always say it takes a village to build a school. And some of our competitors may say, we're going to dedicate you to one person. That one person is on other projects too.
Right.
So that's why we have a village, because, we are managing a few other projects.
Yeah.
But it takes a village because we have a depth of different talents here in front of you. So it's not because you don't just get one of us.
Perfect. So that's our presentation. We'll happily take some questions. And again, given the late hour, we appreciate it.
Great.
Brian's following over.
No, we started a few minutes late. You're 6 minutes under. You're good.
All right, great.
Go back to the slide.
So we have a standardized set of questions that we're asking each firm. So there will be in 3 categories, 3, 3, and 4, so 11 questions total.
Great.
At the 10-minute mark or so for each category, I will give a heads up that that's the case. And then if there's time left over at the end, you'd be welcome to ask us questions.
Great.
All right.
All right, thank you for your presentation. The first category is general firm qualifications and experience. And the first question is, our district has stakeholders in 2 communities, which sometimes presents unique challenges. Can you provide an example of how your firm has successfully navigated a project with multiple stakeholders such as school committees, town officials, and the MSBA?
Dave, I don't know if you have any, I can jump in. Do you have any?
Well, Brian Dayton and I, years ago, we did Concord Carlisle High School. And, we put a matrix together. We want to understand, who the stakeholders are, what's involved to get the decision making. A lot of times, I do tell clients that, we work for the committee and we take direction from the committee, but, we're willing to go anywhere we need to and meet with police, fire. There's a sustainability committee, and we want to get buy-in from everyone. We want to keep everyone informed, because the worst thing to do is do a feasibility study, come up with the best solution around this table, and then send it out to the public, and the public said, this is the first time hearing them. So we think that the outreach starts day one with all stakeholders. Kim, I don't know if you want to talk about South Shore Tech.
I do.
That's kind of.
That's a good one. That's exactly where I was going to take you.
Yeah.
This is what happened. So South Shore Tech is a vocational technical high school that was just approved with a dead override vote in 5 communities. So it's, I don't know if you both know if you have any local vocational technical high schools, but they're very difficult to get the vote through because the towns have their own high schools. They have their own libraries, right? They have their own DPW buildings, and they have their own list of priorities. To then fund a regional technical high school becomes a very challenging issue. We spent a lot of time in PTO meetings and festivals within all of those 5 different towns, and centers for the aging. Wherever we could, we set up a booth. We participated in a meeting. And just 10 days ago, we were successful in getting a vote in South Shore Tech, one of the few in the South Shore that have passed. So it was through, quite frankly, hard work. And we look to bring that same level of dedication and outreach here.
All right, thanks. To follow on, how will your firm assist the district in engaging with the community and ensuring public support throughout the project's duration?
So I think that's a lot where both Lena, myself, and Adele come into play. With Adele's background in education, and Lena and I's sort of orchestration of the project, understanding what you want to see, the committee wants to see in monthly reports and periodic reports, understanding what you want on the website, understanding how we want to run the public meetings, get words out, understanding what events we should be doing outreach to. We've also set up what we call sort of listening tours and listening meetings, where a lot of times we'll just sort of go with very basic info. This is where we're at. If you want more detail, come to the SBC meetings, but we're here to hear the public's opinion, hear stakeholders' opinion, as opposed to it being public comment at the very end of a long, complex meeting. So a lot of this comes down to just sort of the daily work of getting to know you folks, what works out here in your town, how can we help support it, how do we get the website up to date? And a lot of it really comes down to just clear, concise communication. A lot of this can be sort of wonky in a way that we're industry people. There's a lot of acronyms. We try not to use acronyms and things that most members of the public don't understand. So even just in the basic communication, I think there's an effort that we make to sort of speak the language of folks who don't do this for a living.
But at that point in time, when there's public outreach and we're getting closer to the vote, we do listen to the public and what the public has to say. And when questions arise, or maybe sometimes disinformation arises, we create frequently asked questions and kind of guide that conversation within the website, so that everyone's getting the same information at the same time, factually. So that's one of the things.
Meetings, right? We go to a lot of town meetings too, right?
We do.
Yeah, a lot of times, I live in North Andover, and I know more about what's happening in the districts that I have projects in than my own town. And for our Marblehead project, when they did the ribbon cutting, the chairperson of the building committee, David Harris, he said, left field, I get this right, left field worked here as if they lived here. And, that's how we operate.
Great, thank you. And the last question for this section is, describe a project of similar scope and budget that your firm has managed. What were the key successes and lessons learned?
So I go with the elementary school.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, Marblehead Elementary School, the Brown School, is a very successful project. It happened during COVID. It was a little bit, it happened before the crazy escalation of COVID. But we ended up delivering it on time and under budget. I think, one of the, that committee was very disciplined with decision making. So it's budget. I really didn't have to push that too hard. And then for Groton Dunstable, which was really a Groton school, that happened during COVID as well. Had some challenges with escalation, but again, delivered under, will be delivered under budget and on schedule. And for me, it's, I think it's budget and schedule discipline. The MSBA has very strict dates that don't move. Some things can move, but certain dates can't move. So we work backwards. Because if that MSBA date moves, then your project moves. Your project moves too much, you're never going to catch up with escalation. Because, a delay of a month could be $200,000. It adds up. So I tend to be the type A, OCD, schedule, budget, decision-making person. So that's kind of my special sauce.
No, I'd like to say too, Groton was great project, and it was the first time the architect had ever done an NSBA project. But because of like David, Brian's, and Lena's experience, they said, here's the deadline you have to hit. There's no moving here. We have to hit this because we need to open the school.
Great mechanical systems in those schools too.
Great, thank you very much. Gordon, you're up.
So, good evening. This is a section of project management and approach. Manchester Essex Regional School District believes transparent, effective communication between the project team, school district, and community stakeholders are critical for a successful project. Do we all agree? Please discuss your firm's approach to these types of communications, citing several specific examples from past projects.
I think it, in a way, it varies project to project, but I think I was alluding a little bit to it before, that we often repeat these MSBA projects over and over again. We've gotten good at them. It's very important for us to consider that not everyone fluently speaks that language. So both in the way we talk, in the way we write our reports, in the way we ask questions of the committee, starting with the school building committee. How do you want to absorb the info? What makes sense for you? That might be different between an engineer to an educator and anyone else in between. So we try to start by getting to know the school building committee, the school administration, and learning how to effectively and clearly communicate what we're trying to do in the requirements of the project into something that people who maybe haven't spent half a lifetime in development and construction can understand. That this is also something that I think Lena is excellent at. Between Lena and I, a lot of times when we work together, we like to go through individual people. How do we get through to this person? How do we better communicate to that person? And Lena and I will spend a lot of time individually tailoring outreach to folks on the committee, folks at the town, folks in the public, if the committee's okay with that. And we've got some frequent flyers, and that's something Lena and I spend a lot of time with, and really just meeting people where they are with their understanding of construction, development, design, budgeting is, I think, the core ethos of what we try to do.
Yeah, I was gonna say too, in Groton, the project Florence Roach we just finished, we, if the committee wants, we maintain the website, or I maintain the website and put all the documents from SBCs up there, the recordings, that those meetings are recorded. they're out on the local access television, so the transparency, I think, is a word that you used, and I think that's a great word. Yeah, I think we're just very transparent with our, and the whole MSBA
Sometimes,
submission and everything.
sometimes too
Yeah,
transparent.
that's true. Yep, because then we get a lot of questions, but that's okay. So, yeah.
The last thing I'll add is, as part of that transparency, they always say here that, bad news never gets better with time. And, managing expectations and, getting the news out there, whether good or bad, is important, critical to, again, maintaining that transparency and credibility with
Quickly, sorry, but I just want to mention Brian too. By the time we're building, Brian knows all the neighbors know Brian.
Right.
Everyone has cell phone. So I mean, in terms of, I heard it through the grapevine. We have folks around job sites that I'm just gonna go talk to the source.
Right.
He's the one over there and we can help dispel misinformation.
So part two, how does your firm handle change orders? And what strategies do you implement to minimize cost overruns and scope creep?
Can I start?
Can I take?
I'm just gonna go back to my team of experts. We actually have a person who does a drawing review and a value engineering matrix with each set of drawings. We actually have someone who is very good at that aspect of the job. We plug them in to make sure that the coordination of documents has happened at the design milestones as they're happening to prevent change orders, with that quality control. But with that, I'll take the actual change order discussion over to the team.
So in addition to that, I mean, change orders are part of the industry. Designers, engineers aren't perfect. No one's perfect. That's the industry. We look at change orders as being firm and fair. Regarding scope creep, I think it comes down to what I said earlier. It's just committee project discipline. Unfortunately, a lot of projects have to go through value engineering. We go through that. We will categorize or do value engineering in a tiered approach where decisions that have to be made now, and once you make that decision, you can't look back.
Right.
And then decisions that you can accept now to make the budget work, but if you have a different financial forecast, a good buyout, the savings, you can have certain scope that does come back. And we're always looking at hitting that budget number at the end of the day. We've worked with committees where they want to land on fumes. We don't like to land on fumes. We like to land with a quarter tank of gas. But it's also, it's the committee's money. And, I never want to be in a situation where the project comes in over budget. I want to come in a position where the project comes under budget, but the client also knows that if we're returning X amount of money, that the client had the ability to say, oh, I wish I knew that because we would have done this, this, and this. So it's this little kind of financial dance of always forecasting where you're going to land, but also keeping the client informed if they want to, your own prerogative, put more scope back in for some reason.
You guys track your change orders too.
We do, yes.
So I'm gonna add too, as far as from a money standpoint, I think, the MSBA makes a final decision on whether change order is eligible or not. But I think we, through our experience, can give a good crystal ball of like, they're not gonna reimburse you for that. That's a bell and a whistle. They're gonna say, you can do it, but you're not gonna get any money back for it. Or we could say the opposite. That's something that will get reimbursed or hasn't.
We have strategies that help maximize your reimbursement through the placement scope of the project. So.
And we categorize the change orders. Sometimes at the end of the day, it could be, we spent $1 million on change orders. And then we look and we say, well, this was governing agencies, that this is what they wanted, couldn't get around it. Yes, these are change orders of unforeseen conditions. But then sometimes I have to tell the client, 80% of the change orders you asked for. Sometimes at the end of the day, there's no, but then you kind of, it comes back. You've asked for this and this and this. So, when it comes to financial tracking, I don't think anybody tracks the financials like we do.
Can I just add one point too, just to help mitigate them for the construction side?
like, can't do it for the file sub bids, but the other trades you get de-scoped. And we make sure the architect's there, the CM or GC's there. We go through a very lengthy de-scope process because you really want to capture everything during a competitive bid, not when it's just that one trade there and they're going to be in charge of that change order. So de-scoping makes it a really good.
Yeah.
One more from me. How does your firm incorporate life cycle cost analysis and value engineering into the project planning process to optimize long-term operational costs?
Well, this relates a lot to Jay's expertise, but part of it is setting our expectations early. Sustainability stuff relates directly to a lot of life cycle cost savings. So understanding the town's approach and goals to sustainability on a literal level, what lead are we shooting for, et cetera. But there's a million other programs and approaches to that. And then it really comes into having the understanding of the mechanical systems to be able to implement them well.
What we like to do is we like to review 2 or 3 different systems and explain each system to you guys as to your goals, your understandings of them. My end of the thing is to make sure that all of those, whatever systems you pick, are high end, as high end as we can get, and are installed correctly and maintainable.
The energy model is created, early in the project, and the goal is to make sure that we're still maintaining where we said we'd be by checking on, how the equipment then feeds back into the energy model as we go. So it's an iterative process that needs to be constantly checked as well.
And sometimes I'm the unpopular person. I will say, well, how much does that cost up front? What's the capital investment day one? And how long will it take to get the payback? Is it 10 years, 20 years, 50 years, or we don't know? Because it's not my money, it's not my decision. But I just want the client to understand, if you want something, this is what the upfront cost is, and just so you know, it's going to take X amount to get that payback. And again, we all have different ideas or ideology, but I'm the one that wants to put everything on the table. So the decision is made, you had everything in front of you to make that decision.
And in terms of VE, I think it's often, we've worked on projects recently that we established significant value engineering lists in advance of having all the estimators at a table, not as an afterthought. And we didn't end up needing them, which means us and the architect and the estimators at the prior deadlines did our job well. But we always need to approach, when we have the 2 independent estimators sitting down and working on the job with current market prices, we need a VE list in our back pocket. So we work hard to establish those, usually before the design team or the general contractor, construction manager has the list. We usually start as the origin of those lists, and very few sacred cows on those lists. We've all seen projects come back with surprise results, especially a few years ago after the bubble that happened after COVID. And we've learned that we have to be prepared. So we recently landed a job at design development on budget with a $25 million VE list in our back pocket that we didn't even have to touch. So the effort went into establishing those items. We ended up not needing them, which is wonderful. But it can't be an afterthought. You can't say, oh, wow, look, we're 30% over now. We better think of some VE ideas. If it didn't start a few months back with the design team and the engineers, you're behind the 8 ball.
Okay. Good. Excellent. So just last few questions. This is on technical expertise and innovation. So one unique aspect of this project is the age and condition of this building and its existing infrastructure. What approach would your firm take when considering a feasibility analysis and evaluation of renovation versus new? And any specific examples you might have from your past?
So we do a lot of existing condition surveys. And
Yeah,
this is-
we do a lot of it.
Yeah.
On my end of it, we'll go through the building with a fine tooth comb and see if there's anything salvageable. And try to save what we can. A lot of schools get new boilers in within 5 years, maybe you can reuse the boilers. The school had a new chiller put in 7 years ago. And we can probably reuse it, do a complete building analysis and see what's good and what's not.
Infrared check?
Excuse me?
Infrared?
Infrared testing. We all have, well, I have infrared cameras and monitoring devices. So we do insulation, envelope testing. We look at glass, we look at the roof, we look at the walls, condition of the equipment, things like that.
And then I think one of the other big items we look at, so Jay talked about MEP and envelope, is hazardous material, right? Where we do a hazmat survey and look to see, what costs might be there to have to.
Early on, when you do an analysis, even before the designer gets on board, and because I know many people here have already been through this, you've seen this movie during the PSR and the PDP, or PDP, then the PSR. It's that we look at the means and methods of how would you renovate this in an occupied school? Do you have to bring in mods or not? And we'll run the numbers, but sometimes, not sometimes, I always say the longer you see the architect, the CM, and us or the contractor, the more it's going to cost. So time has a direct relationship to cost. So we will look at new construction, we'll look at reno, but a lot of it comes down to the means and methods of how to renovate a building. And I'll always remind the estimators that when you're using a unit rate for new construction, that's one unit rate. When you're using the same unit rate for a renovation project, you need to put in the renovation factor. I call it the attractiveness factor. So I have certain ways of just looking at the analysis.
Sorry.
Similar, could you describe a situation where your firm had to address unexpected structural or environmental issues during a project and how it was best resolved? Unforeseen.
So to me, the best way to mitigate this, first off, is when Lena and I sit down and we begin crafting a project schedule. And why it starts there is by the time we have the architect on board, we want to immediately talk about phase one, ESA, environmental site assessment. We want to immediately talk about what phase is that going to happen in. That goes back to a point I made earlier, but if we're looking at 7 or 8 different sites, you're not going to have the money in the feasibility study to do a proper phase one site evaluation on 7 or 8 different sites. We're good. And that's one of the important things to keep in mind as you expand the design team's attention to multiple sites. We might have to make financial decisions of how deep we can go underground, how many borings we can do, how many samples we can do. But if we were to focus on one site, we would push to do phase one during the PDP, phase two during the PSR, and we'd establish a testing grid as one of the first things to do after the project passed. Because usually by the time we do a phase one and phase two environmental site, subsurface investigation, and test a bunch of soil, we're out of money in the feasibility study. So often we'll want to get the project passed, and some of the money built into that budget and some of the time built into the schedule is gonna send people out here on another site with a 50-foot grid, 25-foot grid if it's appropriate, and test the whole site, because the biggest unknown is underground. As I'm sure you know, because you're asking the question, but really making sure it's incorporated into the designer's schedule and plan during the feasibility study is the best we can do, and focus on the sites that are most feasible. A lot of towns we've worked with sometimes get into look at every site that's over 4 acres in the whole place, whether it's privately owned or not. And that's one way that we can just sort of lose focus and create a project with unknowns, because we weren't able to go to a phase one and phase two site underground investigation.
But we've all been on projects when an unforeseen situation happens, and that's when the metal gets tested, right? Is how do you manage that, right? I think that's part of the essence of the question. And I think it's important to, first of all, bring the experts in and around the table. Again, clearly communicate where we are with the public, especially if there's a safety issue, or in this case, probably a more a cost issue. But bring the experts in, communicate clearly with the community, negotiate, develop a plan with the construction manager and DEP and your environmental specialist and roll that plan out to the community so everyone knows what the cost impacts are, what the time impacts are, what the environmental impacts might be to those, adjacent to site.
Yeah, I was trying to think of a major structural issue that I had to deal with in my
No,
career.
other than our new schools, I
Yeah.
don't remember any of our new schools, but
But I do have a few things that we tend to remind people. When we go through FF&E and technology, I always remind people if there's a certain piece of equipment for special needs or special ed, I'll always make sure that, is there the right structure to hold that piece of equipment? When we look at gymnasiums, I always understand what is going to be hung from the ceiling. So I tend to always look at, we going through, 30 years of experience, when something happens, I'm like, that's not going to happen again on my watch. So I have a little list that I tend to quiz people to avoid surprises.
renovations, we've come across structural issues quite a bit, replacing mechanical equipment on roofs and things like that. We've had to bring in structural engineers to add or reconfigure steel work or something like that.
And environmental, so just one example I'll provide. Everything Brian went to, or was talking about before that, where you have to do your due diligence ahead of time. That site had a lot of arsenic soil because it was an old apple field. We knew that they were going to have a fill over there, so instead of trying to truck that arsenic soil off, which would cost a lot of money, we got with the experts and we were able to bury that on site, which saved the project to town a lot.
I call that cradle to grave.
That's great. Could you please describe your firm's methodology in evaluating, selecting between construction delivery methods, so CM at risk versus design build for this particular project?
Who wants to start that one?
It's another one that a bunch of us, I'm sure, have opinions on.
Yeah.
I think this is right up your alley.
So we will present the pros and cons. And, personally, I'm a fan of the CMR process. But it's not the right fit for everyone or for every project. I think it, depends on the complexity of the site. What is the solution that we are gonna settle on? And again, we'll, present the pros and cons. We've done projects that are, hard bid as well. So we'll support whatever the, will of the committee is.
If this is a project that's done on the existing site in an occupied and operating school, where safety is going to be paramount and logistics are going to be challenging, that's the type of thing we'd want to do planning around, right, for 6 to 12 months before the construction manager hits the job. And the only way you can do that is through CMR process. Through the design and build process, you're going to get, I think, a better cost, at least initially a better cost. But there won't be any planning in and around what's going on an occupied school site. And that, from my perspective, that's a risk that we really want to talk a lot about in this meeting.
I was gonna say too, at the school we just did in Groton, to, talk about it with the school building committee, and it's not just a one-time discussion, it's we take it to a few committee meetings, it's talked about, so the committee can understand, pros and cons and really have an opinion on, which way to go.
Just so you know, that's about 10 minutes on this topic. We started 6 minutes late, so we can take the last question, but I just want to let you know where we are.
Thank you. Well, like we've worked with both CM, GC, but I feel like the CM, it allows you to get building sooner because you can get those early release packages out. So we always look at things like switchgear, which has been a big deal the last couple of years, and we might say, let's go ahead and let's order this switchgear now, so that we're not waiting for it at the back end. Because David always likes to say, rather see it than be looking for it. Right.
I'd rather be looking at it than looking for it.
Yeah, that's what.
One, back to the CMR versus design bid build. If you go design bid build, you're going to obviously pre-qualify your general contractors. And, the way it's set up within the Commonwealth, you may have a pool of firms that, or companies that are B, or C. And if the C entity is the low bid, you're going with the C. Whereas the CMR process, there's a little more flexibility to select the CM firm you would like to work with. So I think a lot of times,
And more of the team you want. to work with, right?
And the team.
About the team.
yeah, that's a good point. It's the team.
Last question, just, what experiences does your firm have with sustainable design, including adherence to LEED for schools? Any examples or past examples?
Lots of them. I mean, we,
They've all been.
I don't think we've done a project that wasn't LEED. In fact, I mean, LEED silver to me is like a baseline, pretty easy to hit. LEED gold and other forms like Passive House is something that we've gotten into on some of our more recent projects that, it can be done in a way that there isn't a mass cost premium, or the cost premium can be justified by the life cycle analyses that we talked about a little bit earlier. But it is so ingrained in the approach to building the right building nowadays, building a building that's going to last, selecting the right equipment, installing the equipment properly, getting the envelope right, that I don't mean to sound like I'm saying it's no big deal, but it's just worked into how we run these projects now. And often we're flirting with LEED gold or once or twice platinum without even really leaning too hard into doing it or running up a massive premium. So I feel like a lot of this is, some of us have backgrounds in design, some of us have backgrounds in mechanical trades, some have backgrounds in construction. Weaving those things all together is, I think, gives us a really good view into the sustainability trends that are out there, and really how to work with them, get them installed and implemented right to a town's benefit.
Most of our projects have geothermal, electric, zero. It's really a balance between, I think, the town's values, and what they can support to the town, which is the, budget. That's really the challenge that you have with those types of systems. It goes back, as we said, to the model and the life cycle, but it really is, I think, around values versus budget. It's a challenging discussion, but one I think this place now.
And we've found that it's pretty short money to put in the infrastructure in case you ever want to. So solar or car chargers, whatever it is, put the infrastructure in, and then 10 years down the road. You can
They're all PV ready.
Yeah.
Also all PV ready.
Well, thank you. We do have about 3 minutes left. If you have any questions for us that can be answered in that 3 minutes.
All our references, please.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
I have a question. Does the town hire outside contractors to maintain your buildings, or do you have a full staff of facilities guys that does your work?
So I will say, I'm going to turn this over to Ruth Breen, who's the chairwoman of our select board, but also with the regional district, we've got the two. So we do have separation in who manages our buildings, but I mean, I think you're more specifically asking about the schools though.
Yes.
In general, so I'll have Teresa take that.
Oh, no, I'll have
Or
to-
superintendent.
Whatever new school is going to be built or renovated, this school here, yeah.
So our facility setup is all of our custodial work is contracted service. With with an on-site facilities manager, maintenance supervisor, and a head custodian who supervises the contractor.
Gotcha.
We do have several contracts for service for things like snow plowing. We don't do that. The towns don't provide the on-site snow removal, so we'll contract for that. Which ones do I forget? We have maintenance contracts and things.
Yeah, we have all of our standard maintenance contracts
Yeah.
for our heating.
Well, the reason I asked that question, right, is if you go with a geothermal system, for instance, and, or a VRF system, we want to make sure that you guys can handle that kind of a system, and you don't want to spend a fortune, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars a year for an outside contractor to come in and do maintenance on it, right? So those are the things that I look at, and I would be working very closely with your staff, whoever's doing the maintenance and training them on the new systems. That's why I asked that question.
Thank you. Well, that is all we have time for. Questions
Thank you.
tonight.
I have a question. Where'd the name left field come from?
We used to have a slide that was our first slide, the definition of left field. It's not, although I love baseball, it's not really around baseball. It's really about being different,
Thinking out of the box.
Thinking out of the box, everyone's over here, we're kind of over here left field. So it's kind of a creative way of thinking outside the box.
Jim's gonna love this because we all picked on him years into it saying, I'm sick of that slide. You gotta get rid of it.
Going back in.
It ain't up too much time, we were getting in trouble.
Now you know.
That's right.
All right. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you all.
We will be deciding tonight, so we're not leaving until it's done.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time, everybody.
Thank you. I know you guys are here late tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot. Nice to meet you.
I am the public.
Presentation was worth 25 points altogether. So when we compilate all those scores, look at everyone's score across the board from 1 to 5. Doran Whittier came up with a 93.85% score. When we look at everything out of 100 points. That's the average of all of us that scored that. If you look at, just going in the order of the presentations here, Turner and Townsend-Geary, when we look at that score, they come out to a percentage of 73.46%. And left field score is coming out to 88.82%. And that is consistent with the scores that I saw coming in. Overall, I mean, certain people had favorites, but
Sorry, so that's the presentation?
no, that's everything.
Oh,
References, how did you do that?
The references, I conducted all the references for Doran Whittier, because Pam had extensive experience with them. So I conducted those. Pam conducted the rest of them. I had extensive experience with left field, so she took that one on, and she also took the Turner Townsend-Geary. And as we would expect, they're gonna give references that are gonna give them glowing references. We only did have to check 3 references each, so that is what we did on those.
They were excellent.
Yep, they were excellent across the board.
I spoke to all 3 for left field, all would hire again. It was a little harder to track people down for TTH, but of the people I heard from, it was very strong, very supportive of the work. So I would give excellent across the board for both of them.
So these scores then are the final or just the scorecard, or does this include the weighted with the?
It's the weighted scorecard.
Okay, so this is the total.
So
So
that
do
is
we
the-
then take a vote based on the highest score, or do we deliberate further?
I think you can make them, I mean, based on the scores, I was anticipating there, if it were, you can make a motion based on the scores, and then if there's any deliberation, you
Yeah.
can.
Yeah.
Okay, discuss it, yep.
Okay, so based on the scores as presented, I make a motion, or do I make one or I entertain one? Doesn't matter. I'll make a motion that Doran Whittier be determined the firm to advance in this process. Is there a second?
Second.
Well, you're tied. 2 seconds. Any discussion?
Henry and Ruth, second.
Yes,
This is for OPM, the owner's product.
yes.
Okay.
Advance in this process for OPM. Thank you.
Aye.
Is there any discussion? Is there any
Is that
discussion?
your discussion?
Has anybody moved yet? Anybody?
It's already done.
Yes, we did that.
So you're on your discussion portion, if anyone has comments, concerns, you want to raise.
I would mind making a comment. I think it's important, and I wasn't involved with the Manchester project. But what I've seen in situations like this, is people tend to lean towards the people that they know. And I think we have quite a few committee members here who were involved with that project. I'm not sure it would change anybody's mind in this, but coming at it with somebody who didn't sit on the Manchester project, so coming in kind of with a little bit of a clean slate where I'm like, I don't know these people, right? So I can come at it with some objectivity, and not that people who sat on the committee who dealt with Doran Whittier aren't able to wipe that slate clean.
but just some, consideration for that. I would say, me personally, I found the left field team stronger and, it brought, I think, a perspective with a deep team that I think, from my perspective, outweighed what Dora brought to the table. And I'm just curious if there's some sense from people of, do they give more weight to a team that they're familiar with than a team that they're unfamiliar with? Just
And I
curious
just
on that.
want to back, I'm really glad you prefaced it like that, because I too was not part of the other school, and I feel exactly the same way. I'm glad the way you put it was exactly what put them just over the edge for me. The deep team, the idea that they have identified specific areas, particularly, I can't stress enough the importance of the relationship between the envelope and the mechanical systems, and the fact that they've been talking about they're doing projects that are net zero, passive house, LEED, not just LEED. LEED is kind of like old hat, but where the code is going is where they are. And that was very impressive to me. It's the only team that really talked that way. And that's going to be such an important part of the maintenance and management of the building in the future. They seem to be doing it, but.
And I'm in the same camp. So I also was not on the Manchester school, and I also favored the third left field. So I think that we all feel the same way, that maybe they were weighted a little bit more because more people were familiar with them.
I will say I also was not involved in the memorial process, except to observe it at the end, at the tail end. But I actually really appreciated left field having a mechanical person here to speak to all of that very much. But at the same time, I really value the idea that Dora and Whittier came ready for our project, looking at possible ways to actually configure this site. And I think there's real value to me, again, coming in blank slate effectively, in that continuity. A team that already understands the dynamics of our communities, and especially where we have to be looking at a few configurations, not just new build here or even, reno here, but we have to be looking at the possibility of Manchester Memorial, and they already know that building inside and out. So to me, I think that there's a value add with that I found compelling.
And I'm curious for the three people that sat on the OPM team, if you would mind sharing your feeling after the presentation. I know that you vetted them to get them to this stage, but now having seen this as a public presentation, where you kind of lie.
I think all three of them are obviously super competent. They do a ton of it over and over. They're very clear about that. Where my focus was consistently in listening to all of them was how they present to the communities and knowing the communities. And that was heavily weighted in my mind. And just the individual personalities and me picturing them in front of the towns. And I went with Dora ultimately.
Gordon?
So I tend to agree with you. If I looked at that as if I'd never met any of them before, I did feel that Dora and Whittier, particularly Christina, was a little bit nervous. She spoke very fast rather than to us. She just spoke the words. That's not the Christina that you will see over a period of time. She's very, very human-like, very engaging, and very, very tremendously competent. So if you just did a blank slate, I tried to put myself being objective and not subjective about it. Objective, maybe I would have gone with the third one straight up, but I cannot not think about the last 8 years and the amazing experience we've had with Dora and Whittier and how they've helped us and benefited us and managed us. And it's so smooth and so simple. And that's the exact same team too, all the way through, except for the young guy that you brought on today. So I felt knowledge of who we are, what we've done, and if we're going to consider using Memorial School as potential and add on to put more kids over there, they do know that school. They do know that school. It just, there's no consideration The other guys I thought were good. I thought all three of them were very competent and capable, and they've got a resume, particularly the third one. Had a resume to kill. My goodness, it was amazing. I just didn't, I honestly looked, I did a little, just, looking, I did get subjective. I didn't feel that the third group would be the right fit for us. Why? I'm not sure. I just didn't feel it having done this. I've been on every school building committee since the middle of the, since forever. But I just didn't feel that good. And the second group, I just didn't feel that was a fit no matter what. That just wasn't going to work for us.
Thank you.
That leave me? Yeah. So I was not involved with Memorial, planning at all. And, I was in favor of left field tonight. When I hear the pros, particularly the ones Gord mentioned about the familiarity coming in, that's a big consideration. I think that makes a lot of sense. The other thing is, because we spent some time culling the group and brought these three, the differences that I had, at least on my sheets, is gonna be 1 point,
Yeah.
if they're 4s and 5s, we didn't bring someone in who was gonna be a 2, or 0, 1, whatever. So I think it's difficult and we're almost destined to have a fairly close, have that come down between two firms.
Thank you.
I'd like to comment too that I know we're not talking much about TTH, but one member of their team, is it Brian Bronca, has been very diligent. He's been following this for over a year now and paying attention and proactively being in touch. And that's just something that I think is really smart and.
He was the bearded guy in the second group.
Yeah, yes.
I think both Tyler and I liked him. Can we pick
yeah. But ultimately, the scores bear out that probably wasn't the good fit, but I just thought I really wanted to point that out. And I noticed it.
Yeah.
Any further discussion? Okay, the motion on the table is to move forward with Doran Whittier as OPM for this project. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Opposed.
Any abstaining? Okay, the motion passes with 1. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Actually,
What else do you need?
we need unfortunately one other vote.
Okay.
It's just a formality. We need a vote to approve the request for services for an owner's project manager. This is actually the process that we did last month.
Yep.
But we need that formal vote certified for MSBA. So I'm asking vote to approve request for services for an owner's project manager, solicitation and corresponding advertisement. As I mentioned, the bid docs were made available January 22nd and bids were due on February 9th. But now we just need a formality.
Would someone like to say so moved?
So moved.
Annie says so moved.
Seconded.
We have a second. Any discussion? We voted for this at the school committee level as well previously. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That's the end.
Motion to adjourn.
Second. All in favor? 9:43 PM.